It's on.
Thank you. You can see that. Good evening, Littleton. Welcome to the January 23rd. Thank you. January 24th Joint Select Board
Who was that?
Finance Committee meeting.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, are you ready to begin your Finance Committee meeting?
We are.
And I declare the Select Board meeting open.
I declare the Finance Committee meeting open.
Mr. Ansaldi, would you like to kick it off?
Sure.
Or Alicia?
So yeah, I'll just for the public, this is night 2, night 1, which showed on the screen. That's with both boards reviewed: the town clerk, human resources, LCTV, the assessor, accounting, treasurer, collector, veterans agent, veterans benefit, animal inspector, Disability Commission, Memorial Day, Patriot Day, Historic Commission, Cultural Council, Shade Tree Committee, PMBC, and then we went into the property and liability insurance and transfers and employee benefits. So that was everything that we did in night 1. And night 2 is
January 24th.
January 24th. Thank you,
Appreciate
Gino.
that. It's good to have it.
23. Here's the agenda for tonight. And the only thing I want to bring to both boards' attention, on February 4th, how we scheduled the Super Saturday, the school department is not able to attend. So my thought is we certainly could still have it, but it would only be probably for an hour and a half to 2 hours, where you could do it a night. We could look at another night, and we could decide on that before the end of tonight, what night might work, and then get back to the school committee and see when they can when they can attend. And perhaps maybe just throw that as a night instead of a Saturday?
Let's try that.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Okay.
Let's look at, we can talk about it at the end of tonight and
Sure.
see what days are definitely don't work.
All right, sounds good. So our first department head that's going to present their budget and talk about all the great things that they're doing here in this beautiful Reuben Hall Library is Sam Alvarez.
Hello.
We have added the pages, everybody. Page
There you go.
164. So
Thank you.
you're learning
Live
from
and learn,
mistakes.
live and learn.
Ready? All right, so Sam Alvarez, Library Director. So some major accomplishments this year. At the beginning of the year, I mentioned that we received an Access for All LSTA grant from the state. So the grant was for $14,000, and what that grant allowed us to do was to purchase new technologies for the hearing and visually impaired patrons of Littleton. So using that money, I purchased a new hearing induction loop system for the Murray Conference Room. This room actually already has one. That was part of our original project. We also purchased a video magnifier and clear reader, which is upstairs right now, and that allows patrons to magnify and view books or other items and different viewpoints or larger. That's a picture of it. You can go upstairs and see it as well. We also have something called a Clear Reader Plus, which is a device that will read a book. It scans the book and then actually reads it to the patron. So that's now available for patrons. We've seen a lot of new visits to the library over the past year. Other libraries have also started looking to us for ideas about what to do with their new building projects. As you can see, circulation has increased over the last year by about 73,000 over the previous year. And we've also had increased visits to the library by 26,000. Meeting room use has increased, and patrons are just loving the new library. The new space has also allowed for us to increase programming. So we had a YA librarian on staff that was doing a lot of teen programs. Our assistant director and children's librarians were doing adult and children's programming. And so program attendance also increased by about 1,300. This year I worked with the human resources director, Michelle, to take a look at our staff job descriptions. And she helped me out to kind of refine them. Some of the changes we made were to take out some unnecessary items, like there were references to like typewriters in there and weird things like that. So They're now all reviewed and updated. Recently, we also released an online survey to determine the programming needs of Littleton patrons. So that's been out for about a month now. We've seen about 150 to 200 responses, and we're going to keep it open until the end of the month, and then we're going to use that to start focusing on new programming for the rest of the year and next year. This year, we also met with the school committee to discuss how we can collaborate. The children's librarian and YA librarian met with the school departments, and we talked with them about how we can interact. Right now, we have a Michelle Hirth from the Littleton Transition Program over at the high school. She has some students that are working here to help build their vocational skills, and so they're helping us out with shelving and shelf reading and some other little projects. We're also working with the Council on Aging on something called the Book and a Bite program. So the Book and a Bite program is a program which allows patrons that are homebound to receive books at home. So we have a volunteer, actually Andy, who used to work here. She takes books to patrons that are homebound, and the COA provides a gift card, which allows us to buy like little snacks for them, and so we bring them a book and a snack. This year we've also increased collaborations with other town departments. The police held a ALICE training for us here. The fire department did a fire drill. I've been meeting with Anthony bi-weekly to talk about library updates, which is something I never did with previous town administrators, so it's been a big help. Most of the major building punch list items are now complete. We still have a few things here and there that we're working on, but most of the major things are done. We received the 5th and final building grant disbursement from MBLC ahead of schedule, so that brings us to our grand total of $5.8 million. And the solar panels are due to be completed within the next couple of weeks. They're up. We're just waiting on an inverter. Due to COVID, it was back ordered, and so we're just waiting to get it installed and schedule that. So that should be in the next couple of weeks. So once that's done, we can apply for our LEED certification and the Green Library Incentive application so that we can be reimbursed for some funds.
And presumably also lower electric costs.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Presumably lower electric.
Oh, yes, lower electric costs too, as well. Right.
We're saying,
Yeah,
Sam, you got some of the lead benefit previously, and this is in addition to, correct?
No, we have to complete all of the requirements for the LEED in order to
okay. Thank you.
So other goals are to develop, continue to develop our educational, diverse, and entertaining program based on the patron survey responses. We want to take what we've learned over the past year. We've only been open a year, November 8th, so we're still learning about the new building. So we want to take what we've learned and the survey responses and patron feedback and staff feedback, and sort of figure out how we're going to use this new library moving forward and what programming we can offer, and if that means changing hours at all or that sort of thing. So right now we're working on that. We're also working on creating another strategic plan. So every 5 years we have to submit a strategic plan to the state. So the last strategic plan really focused on building the new library and that getting to that point. So now that we have it, we're going to focus on what can we do with the library that we now have. Another goal is to work with the new facilities manager, once that person is on board, to create a routine maintenance plan and forecast any future system needs and budget requirements so that we can maintain this beautiful new building. We also want to build a collection to meet patron requests. So we have a growing, diverse community. A lot of new patrons are coming through the library doors, and so we just want to make sure that we have a collection that meets their needs. So I don't have any capital requests, thankfully. I think a new building was enough. I did speak with other vendors, the architects, the OPM about what our future needs might be. None of them thought that we would need anything for the next 10 years. I'm going to take the I'm going to wait for the building facilities manager to kind of work with him and kind of figure that out so that we have a better, more non-biased opinion on that. So as far as operating budget requests, personnel, I'm asking for $644,873. That's a $44,505 difference over FY23. So one of the requests is that we take our processing clerk and take them from 10 hours a week to 15 hours per week. So the processing clerk is, just to give you an idea of what she does, she's the person that basically processes everything that comes into the library. So she covers the books, she puts labels on them, she barcodes them. She also helps with any programs that we might have. So if there's like a craft kit, she'll help create the kits. So this position was created back in 2015, and the same person is still in that position. So just to give you an idea, when the person started in 2015, we had about 450 to 500 new items come in every month. Now with the new library, we have between 700 and 750 items coming in per month. So these additional hours would just help her to keep up, because really she's the only person on staff that we have doing this. So that additional 5 hours would account for $6,086.52 of the $44,505 we're asking for in personnel. And then the remainder is due to the just annual step increases and the change in the schedule and the COLA. Yes?
On the front page for wages, it's $644K, but on the FTE account, it's $627K. What's the difference?
Where are you looking?
On page 166 for the budget, it shows $644,873.
Yes.
And then on the detail FTE, it shows $627,265. So there's a $17,000 difference between the two.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake in the budget book. It should be.
I noticed some things in there too. I think the two things were pulled from different data sets, and the 644 is right and the 627 is wrong.
Right. Right. So as far as expenses go, we're asking for $193,100. So the major contributors to that is increase in books and materials. So every year I ask for an increase due to we have to increase for the state certification requirements. Also this year MVLC is increasing their assessment. So MVLC is the consortium that the library is a part of. It's the 36 library consortium. They are how we share books between libraries. They help us maintain our integrated library system. The integrated library system is, so when you go up to the start desk and you check out a book, that's the software the staff is using to check out the book for you. We also use that software for cataloging and entering the books into the system. And so for the past 5 years, MVLC has not increased for anyone in 36 libraries. And so now with COVID, changing requirements and staff, they're asking for an increase, and this is across all 36 libraries. So it's normally it's around 37,000, I think. So this year we're asking for 39,000 for that. And then the remaining covers the costs of things like programming costs, supplies, both office supplies and processing supplies, and reintroducing the travel reimbursement. So I hadn't asked for it in previous years due to COVID. So now that COVID is hopefully over, more of the staff want to go to professional development opportunities, and so this would help with reimbursing that as we have in the past. Also, as they have in the past, the trustees have also agreed to promise $15,000 towards the materials budget over the next 3 years. So altogether with wages and expenses, the total comes to $837,973, or a total extra increase of $60,355. Any questions?
I'll just observe that I think going up 7.7 when the service you've provided has gone up 75% or so, that ain't bad.
The budget book does say that there, it lists additional sources of income from friends, state aid, and donations, but it's not in the book.
Yeah,
Can you just talk a little bit about like what kind of money that is and what you use it for?
Sure. So the Friends, they purchase our museum passes. So that usually comes out to between $12,000 and $13,000. So that counts towards our MAR, or our certification. So they pay for museum passes, which if you want to go to the Boston Children's Museum or the MFA or whatever, you can reserve a museum pass from the staff, and you can get discounts off of your ticket. And then the Friends also pay for programming. A lot of the programming they pay for are summer and winter reading programs, but also programs throughout the year. And then state aid is what we receive when we are certified. So I think in this past year we received $17,000. So we use that also for things like programming. Sometimes we use it for supplies if what we get in supplies from the town doesn't cover everything, because libraries are a niche market, so a lot of the processing supplies that we have to pay for are sometimes more expensive than you might find in other places. So sometimes what we get from the town doesn't cover it, so we use that for supplies. Other miscellaneous things. And then the trustees have agreed to, in the past, they've given between $12,000 and $15,000 per year for things like books and materials.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. I have a couple questions, and I think they may be less for Sam and maybe more for town administrator or select people. This great building, it was the first apartment that was spun out, if you will, of the big town hall. It's standalone, relatively standalone, I'd say. And do we have any plans to put power, water, sewer charges into this budget? I've noticed that on other departments that I've reviewed, we've moved the computer license fees into the department. I don't know, other than the MVLC, which you have here, I don't know if there are any other software licenses that are in here. And I don't see anywhere in here janitorial services. I mean, it's a standalone building. Over time, we could get a better picture of what it actually costs to have a library. And next year, I assume, we'll be looking at a similar budget for the senior center up on the hill. So if we could put together sort of a model and use the library as the first model, then as new sites come on, we just sort of bring them into that model. So you'd have a better understanding of what it actually costs to run the library, to run a senior center, to run whatever it's going to be down the street. So I just think it'd be a worthwhile activity. And
Through the chair,
maybe it falls on the shoulders of
if I could answer that question.
administration.
So in the facilities budget, they used to dump just a pot of money in electric and water.
Right.
So what we've done is we've labeled each account line by building type so that we can track those different expenses by building. But it's within the facilities department
Okay,
itself.
but I'd like, going forward, and not, it doesn't have to be this year, but going forward, I'd like to see what it costs to run this building. I think, Sam's done a good job managing the activities and the people, and the services, certainly, but we know there's an uptick in cost for sewer. We know, power, electricity up, but solar panels are hopefully down. And janitorial service. It's somewhere, it costs us something to keep the place painted and cleaned and whatever. So, and like I said, if it was only this building, it wouldn't be all that big a deal to me, but it's going to be a bunch of different satellite operations around this town that we could look at as individual operating units.
Yes, even if it stayed, even if the actual line items stayed under facilities, if they were echoed into this part of the book,
Right.
then we could see them. So it
Right.
wouldn't change
The
budget
doesn't
per se, but it would
necessarily,
give
right.
us more view.
Right. Yeah, that's fine. But-
And I think it's great to get ahead of the game, before we're having lots of, as we go from everything's in one place to everything's everywhere. So,
Can I? I agree with both of those comments, but keep in mind that this isn't the first building. There's also a police station and a fire station that are reflected that way.
No, this is the new example.
Yeah, but slightly newer than some of the other ones, but yeah. The only, I agree with the second, what you said, Brian, that they should all be in one, because theoretically, like a facilities manager should actually be looking at the electric bills and the gas bills, not Sam.
Right. No,
Right.
So they do need to be centralized so that someone can be, monitoring them and saying that they're correct, rather than just throwing them over and, here, Sam, pay this
Right.
bill, because it will get the proper scrutiny.
Right, and I think what you'll hear from the IT department is that's basically what's happened with a lot of the licenses. The money for the license has gone out to from an accounting standpoint, has gone out to the department, but the control of the license is with the IT department.
So I do have, one question for Sam on that. If we did that, does that affect the MAR at all?
Yes, it does.
So that would be the one concern.
What does it affect?
How much we'd have to spend, how much the
Materials.
library would spend in materials, because now your budget goes up.
So as my budget, as you give
It's a
me more money,
percentage of-
the
okay,
amount
that's-
I spend on books increases.
Right, and we did look at that, right, and that was for that very reason that we pumped the brakes on that, because originally I thought the same as what you were just thinking, is let's read the true costs of each department and separate out the utilities and et cetera. But because of the effect on the library, we just let it go status quo right now.
Right, but to Brian's point, it doesn't have to be in the library budget, but it could be just a separate line item that's just,
Or certainly could be split out a little bit clearer in the facilities budget so we can show the cost of
Yeah,
each.
but- That's
but I
fine.
think we're saying just here on page 166, just copy it
Yeah.
here so we can see it.
Sorry, does the 140 materials, does that represent the maximum you need to spend, or?
So that's what the minimum I'm asking for now. And then I'm asking the Friends, what they pay museum passes also contributes to that. And, yeah.
I mean,
so-
is that close to what?
Oh, yeah, it's close to.
Or right at, or just above, or?
I don't remember what exactly, actually.
That's okay. If it's just a
Yeah.
little above,
Yeah,
I'm asking if you have a lot of wiggle room there, or if it's like you have to spend.
It's like 95%
Okay.
of the need.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good,
So, yeah, just, Alicia, so, in the public buildings budget, I mean, it has the utilities kind of by category, right? But you're saying in like, you have a track in the jail or whatever, more details, so if we wanted a more detailed report, we could
Correct.
bring- Okay, thanks.
Anyone else for the library?
Nope.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
It's great
job.
to see the building being used. I mean, 75% increase in usage.
I'm going to be presenting the IT budget for Nancy this evening.
Okay.
Major accomplishments for calendar year '22 include document management with Laserfiche, Civic-ready public notification system, creation of an incident response plan with the Maya grant, Civic Plus, creation of a new website design, it's in process currently, elimination of physical service and instead going to cloud-based, length of online maps and Access GIS and online permitting. Departmental goals for 2024, Munis upgrade, which she's working with accounting on right now, adding of additional security features to network, that helps with cybersecurity, employee on-site training for Outlook, the website, and any question and answer sessions. Continue to convert paper documents to electronic for efficiency. Replacing the entire security cameras and doors at the police department if approved at annual town meeting. I kept nothing for our capital budget at this time. For fiscal year '24, highlighting OpenGov Finance Budget Book application. Civic Plus final payment of new website. It's actually going to be ClearGov, not OpenGov. Civic Ready Community Notification System. Additional cloud backups, network vulnerability scanning, and 24/7 endpoint security monitoring on all devices mandated by Maya Insurance. And an increase in Microsoft 365 licenses, both amount of licenses for end users and increase in pricing per license. So wages are at $197,272, expenses at $500,000 for a total of $697,272.
Are we expecting to see savings from getting rid of the on-prem?
I'm getting rid of the.
Sorry, getting rid of the on-prem servers and going to the cloud?
I would have to check with her on that, but I would think.
It's already happened, right?
Yeah.
Very little servers at town hall.
Great, good.
Maybe one left.
Okay, good.
So, Alicia, with all the expenses that moved, I mean, you showed an increase of 32,000, but how much did we move out to other departments? Like, what's the true increase in software just within IT? Should we feel for that, or?
Oh,
There was,
Yeah.
They moved a lot out too.
so Nancy was my liaison
Okay.
department, so Fred and I met with her. $87,000 is being transferred out of budget, go into the different departments for software licensing. The big pieces is that fourth bullet down, the additional cloud backup, vulnerability scanning, things like that. It's making up the differences. We're being mandated by Maya for our IT insurance policy to increase some of the efficiencies and security things we have in our networks to qualify for additional insurance. So that's the biggest component there that's taking up
Okay.
most of the time.
So it's 117, like, increase in software after you move out the.
Well, the 87,000 represents licenses that were in use previously, but the budget was moved around. But
Correct.
was that also an increase from the previous year? Was it?
That takes into account
The
the
increases.
increase.
Right.
So I don't know.
Oh, it's
the
87,000
specific-
additional
Right,
this
yeah.
year.
It's taken
Yeah.
out.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we move that to
Got it.
87, it's 87 plus 32.
Plus 32,
Okay,
Right.
okay, thank you.
And Alicia, do we have any update on what's happening with the schools and their security?
They're still working on it,
Okay.
on looking at authentication.
Okay. Okay.
Anyone else? If not?
Yeah, one of the things, just for looking ahead, Mark always likes us to think ahead, but, I had a conversation with Superintendent Clenchey because we duplicate IT services, right? And there's a need on the school, and they are more of a Mac-based, and we're more of a Windows-based. But, we talked about exploring the possibility of having a centralized IT that would use, that would serve both the town and the schools. Nancy does a tremendous job with keeping our systems very secure. You hear about other towns, and it's probably a worse nightmare. I'm very confident, and we've gotten some grant money which enabled her to do some of the necessary IT security upgrades. So that's something that the superintendent and I have discussed in future years, that if that's a way to maybe combine and reduce costs, or stop the growth anyways.
That's really good to hear. I'll say I'm a cloud security specialist, and so I hear the horror stories. So I'm glad to hear that we're on top of it.
Well, yeah, hopefully we can just jinx ourselves, huh?
Yeah.
Quite aggressive.
So do we have, a good question is, like Tyler said, the IT budget, basically their software went up by over 25%. Are we expecting that growth to be bound going forward? Or are we expecting that, I mean, is it 25 going to be 25% again next year? And,
Well, that's because she's implementing a brand-new website.
well, Steve said it was because of the MIA stuff, so we partially too, right? So,
Yeah, that's a part of it as well.
so,
But the implementation of the new website, that's going to be a one-time cost. That's not
so
gonna
it's
be
not an
on-
on-time.
We have when you had the list, I'll give you the list. She has a new website, additional yearly fee for $3,500, chatbot for the website, $2,500, civic-ready communication notification system, $10,000, remaining balance on the website, they let us pay it over 2 years, that's $16,000, so that's a one-time right there. Increase in licenses is $4,200, Zoom additional licenses $1,000, the ClearGov budget finance book is $7,500. Vulnerability scanning is $1,000. She has SIEM and SOC 24/7 security monitoring and reporting on all devices of $33,120. Increased security patching for $10,000. Additional cloud storage and cloud backups $20,000 for a total of $108,820.
Okay, so we're not expecting, the question is, are we expecting it to be growing that much again next year? Or we expect just to be paying the same plus or minus?
ClearGov to
3%?
$7,500, the Civic Ready 10,000, and the balance for the website 16,000. Seems like they're one-time costs. The others would be subscriptions.
There could be some maintenance contract associated with that, but, you know, one thing I think we all know is that IT, you have to be a step ahead, and, you know, we'll continue to be a step ahead, so if you're looking for a savings next year, I couldn't commit to a savings. I'd rather be more secure with our servers and our infrastructure than worry about $20,000.
No, I'm not worried about, I'm worried that next year it's going to be another $100,000 increase.
No,
than it is
we're
this year.
not, there's nothing
That's
planned,
the-
there's nothing planned that would come to that, rise to that level.
But the one hole that I don't think anybody in this room can answer is what's happening with the schools. And I know they're looking at it and trying to figure out what they need. But that's to Mark's point. You know, if there's another half of this for the schools, then that's on top of what's here, that's all.
If you were to combine
Yep.
processes.
Or if, you know, the schools are going to have to pay it, the taxpayer's going to have to pay it. Right.
Okay. Hi, Liz.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you. Good evening. I'm Liz Trudiak. I'm the Director of Elder and Human Services. If I haven't had the pleasure of meeting any of you, hello. So let me just tell you a little bit about my department before I jump right in. So Elder and Human Services is the town's social service agency within a municipality, as well as the senior center, which provides daily transportation, daily activities, and daily meals for folks in town. We assist residents of all ages. In calendar year 22, we served 1,068 unique individuals in various ways, and unique in the way that we counted them just once, even if they came to multiple activities. Based on Littleton's population, that means we reached about 10.5% of the entire population of Littleton, but if you look at just the over 65 population, we reached 42% of those folks, which is up 2% over last year. We had an exciting year in 2022. We did a lot of collaborations with different departments. We collaborated with public safety quite a bit, as we found that our departments kept overlapping in many ways, so we decided to figure out how we could be more proactive. One of the things we did was created the Community Crisis Intervention Team, where my department, our outreach workers, the police department, fire department, and building department got together to discuss cases that kept popping up on our radar and tried to figure out a solution to intervene before the crisis point. And getting everyone together in the same room was immensely helpful for those cases. The second thing we did together was create the Littleton Safe Return Program. If you hadn't heard of this, this was an initiative we did to help people with dementia or other cognitive disabilities, that for people who may wander away from home. So we created a form for folks who their loved one or caregiver could fill out the form, all of the information to identify that person, including a photo, including places they might go to, and distributed those to people in town to fill out and have on file with the police department in case there were some sort of crisis. One of our other major accomplishments was we enhanced our meal program and continued to rebuild it after COVID. Part of that was holding 41 soup and sandwich lunches, 27 breakfasts, 8 lunch and learns, 9 caregiver dinners, 5 big luncheon cookouts, and that is all in addition to the 5,439 meals that left our kitchen for the Meals on Wheels program. Food insecurity does exist in this town, even though you might not be able to see it outright. We also worked very closely with the finance department and our assessors department to maximize the benefit of the senior tax work-off program to residents in town. Historically, this has been a really popular program, one of the biggest in the states, and we really took a lot of time to go through the IGR, go through all the rules and regulations, and figure out how we could best serve people in town. What we ended up doing was creating a new set of guidelines, a new cap on the max abatement, so we raised it up to $1,500 per household, set a cap of 100 individuals, and as of this week, we have 100 households enrolled in the program participating in the senior tax work-off. Major on the list was making the center on Shattuck Street, making progress with that with the positive town meeting vote in May 22, and then bringing on our builder, Commodore Builders, in the fall of 22. For smaller accomplishments but more meaningful to residents, we provided 1,544 van rides to folks and 2,209 opportunities for engagement for people in town. Last budget cycle, we were approved to hire a second outreach worker starting July 1. So that was one of our other major accomplishments. So in the end of August, we brought on Alicia Rago as our second outreach coordinator. Since then, we've brought her up to speed, and as you can see on our chart in that little corner, the number of unique people that we're serving per month is slowly starting to tick up now that she's getting up to speed. They're seeing about 200 unique individuals per month. Go to the next slide. When I said earlier that we provided 2,209 opportunities for engagement, this is the chart that I'm referring to. This is a list of our ongoing programs and services that we provide. Within that, we logged 7,887 check-ins and signed. And in addition to that, our outreach workers logged 5,766 points of contact with people. We're really big on keeping track of all of our statistics and numbers, but we are only as good as we can be with keeping track of all of this. So it could be slightly higher. So with all of that, being some of our past accomplishments, we're looking forward to reaching these accomplishments in the future. We're really excited to bring the building project across the finish line, hoping to break ground in the spring, potentially early summer. That is a day I'm really looking forward to. Goal number 2 is just keep continuing raising awareness of our programs and our services. We're reaching 42% of the seniors in town. We could do better. We're reaching 10.5% of everyone else in town. We could do better. So I think we are going to continue to do some outreach. Goal number 3 was to achieve dementia-friendly community status accreditation. We are AARP age-friendly accredited, but I would like to achieve dementia-friendly accreditation as well. That's with Dementia Friendly Massachusetts, and we're well on our way with the programs we've implemented with public safety, and a majority of my staff and van drivers are now certified dementia friends or dementia practitioners. So we're getting there. Okay, with all of that being said, I like to think our impact for our little tiny department is pretty substantial, especially when you see the little slice of pie that we take up in the overall big picture of Littleton's total operating budget. EHS is 0.66% of the overall town operating budget. Our FY24 budget is a total budget increase of 7% over FY23, and 4.97% increase over the FY23 operating budget. At a high level view, you can go to the next one. These are our line items. At a high level view, this is what our operating budget looks like. Our professional services line, I know that it was a question in previous meetings, that is where we house our William James Interface Program, which is our mental health referral services program. We also have print shop services and outside vendors to service our kitchen equipment in the professional services line. Other expenses line is for cell phone reimbursements for staff. If we drill down a little deeper into these numbers, Ryan, thank you. Explain some of the increases that we have. So the increase in the meal site expense is one of our larger increases. The food costs that we've noticed for the actual food costs that we're spending this year have gone up significantly. So looking at the food inflation indexes, we increased our food budget by 20% in accordance with those indexes. 18% increase for vehicle repairs based on the actual costs of oil changes and regular maintenance and fluids for the vehicles. And we have increased travel expenses in this budget due to our additional staff member doing more home visits, more vehicles on the road. We have new longevity added to our budget as well, as a staff member is reaching 5 years. We have great staff members, 4 full-time, 1 part-time, and 4 van drivers who are funded or reimbursed funded through the Montechusett Regional Transport Authority that are not reflected in this budget. I like to think we run a fairly lean budget based on the fact that we're able to supplement our operating budget. So no cuts were made to our budget from administration. In this picture, I just added some of our fantastic volunteers that make it possible for us to provide the level of service we do with our small operating budget that we do have. In addition to the volunteers and the staff, the senior tax workers, we also receive the Executive Office of Elder Affairs formula grant every year, which pays for our program instructors, and that's generally about $20,000 for all of our fitness and wellness classes that continually go on. We have no new capital requests for FY24, but if we're looking forward to the future in a 5-year projection for operating costs, our new building will require costs, as I discussed with Fred. Utilities are one great example of that. We also expect that we'll need to increase staff, bringing our part-time administrative assistant to a full-time position, and I expect that to be FY26. In FY26, another expense that I see us having as a capital expense is a new handicap accessible wheelchair van. This has been on our capital plan for quite a while. Due to COVID, we put it on hold because we weren't running vans for 2 years. Now that we're slowly getting back to speed, pre-COVID we were running about 4,000 van trips per month or per year. Right now, we're still at about 1,500, so we're not quite back up to the level we were at. So I keep putting this off. So this van, I believe, will be between $68,000 and $75,000, depending on the inflation. And it is partially funded through gift funds. We have $33,000 in a gift fund, and the Friends of the Council on Aging have also pledged $21,000 towards this vehicle. By FY26, we may also be eligible for additional grant money. The van in this picture that you see here was purchased with grant money about 5 years ago, and still reporting on it monthly. So grant funds definitely come with a little extra work. So in summary, just wanted to tie it all up. We do run a lean budget. We have slight increases due to steps and COLA and just the regular inflation of the actual costs of items that we're using or purchasing. Our operating budget is supplemented by grants such as the formula grants. Whenever possible, we try to seek outside funding whenever that's available. I always like to say at the end of these budget presentations that we give back to the town with our senior tax work-off program, 100 seniors providing over 10,000 hours of work to the town. And then our future operating budget with the new building will increase operating costs, but that is to be determined.
One quick question. I think we talked about it, but I can't remember the answer. The Crosstown Connect
Yes.
fee staying flat. Do you have an update on that, or are you comfortable with it being flat? Or?
I'm comfortable with it being flat at this time. There was some discussion about, so Crosstown Connect is the service that we use for our dispatching for our vans. It's a collaboration between multiple towns. There was discussion about some of the towns not utilizing that service anymore. Would we continue to use it if other towns dropped out? I'm comfortable with the $11,500 that's in there now, and having that remain flat.
Good, thank you.
Maybe for Alicia, this is similar to the other one where the wages on the budget don't apply to the details, so I think we need to get these books updated.
Microphone.
No, the whole, just, yeah. Just the budget and the detail don't reconcile, so we just need to get the books updated so we can see the detail behind the wages.
I'll say great presentation, and y'all are doing a fabulous job, and I think we all can't wait to see that wonderful day down the road, not too long.
Thank you.
I think we're getting our money's worth.
I think so.
I
Big bang for your buck.
I have two quick questions. In the narrative, it says that you have funding for 6 part-time drivers, but you only have 4. Are you looking to hire 2 more? And I think you said that was funded through something other than the town. So.
Yep.
You looking for a part-time job?
No, I'm not. I'm looking for fewer part-time jobs.
That's a great question. Before this meeting, I was in the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting talking about this very exact thing. So pre-COVID, we had 6 van drivers running 2 vans a day. Busy. COVID came, took the vans off the road for almost 2 years. We have not bounced back all of the way. So we have the 4 van drivers. Some days they're very slow. So we're filling their time with washing the van, sanitizing it, doing trainings. We have not fully recovered. So we do have those 2 open slots, but not necessarily actively looking to fill them at this time, although per diem people are always nice to have. I think it's still posted on the town website. And that's a reimbursement through the Montechusett Regional Transport Authority. So every month I bill them for their hours, the driving hours, the gas. I report to them on the mileage of the vans, how many passengers, how many deadhead hours. It's extensive monthly reporting.
Okay. And my other question is, in the narrative, it talks about the William James interface and the program costs $32,000 for a 2-year agreement.
Yes.
Is that $32,000 per year or $32,016 per year?
16 per year.
Okay.
We are exploring some other programs that are out there, comparing the services that they offer versus the cost. I was able to have William James agree to the $16,000 rather than an increase up to $20,000 because we are looking at other options. So for this year, it'll stay 16.
So we're doing another 1-year agreement with them now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess we're done.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Alicia.
Thank you all for entertaining this discussion this evening. So, Alicia Day, I am the Director for Parks and Recreation and Community Education here in Littleton. I do just kind of want to jump into all of our major accomplishments. A lot of this expresses the importance and the things that we do to create community building within our town. So some of the major accomplishments that we've had for this past year was that a majority of our summer programs were sold out That has never happened since I've been here in my 8 years. So the need for the programming that we are doing is growing incrementally, exponentially every year. So that is something that we're excited to take on that challenge, but it is also a challenge as we, grow and we work with the staff that we currently have. Being able to return back to our successful special events, that's something during COVID we weren't able to do. So this year was the first time that we were able to get back to Oktoberfest, full Third Thursdays, the Touch a Truck, and the Easter programs that we had done for like an egg hunt and the candy scramble, as well as trunk or treat. So all of those had been back on this year. Another really amazing award for this department was we were able to get a grant from the United Way for $42,000 to support our after-school program, which also has increased. Pre-COVID, I would say we were probably somewhere around 10, 15 kids a day, and now we're anywhere between 30 to 40 kids a day. So that program has most definitely increased. And that support from the United Way has been a huge help. So the other piece, which this is actually going to be a somewhat smaller presentation than I've ever done in the past, we're very close to closing out the enterprise fund. So I would definitely say within the next month, we should be able to spend there's about like 63,000 left in there. And then that would mean that we're fully over to a revolving fund, as well as some items on the general fund, which we'll be speaking about tonight. All right, so department goals. So these are goals that we wanted to be able to accomplish for 2024. So again, I just spoke to the revolving fund. So that is something that we are in the process of switching over to that officially. This allows us to be able to create funds over time where we might be able to use those for capital projects, maintenance needs, and support of new programs in the future. So that is definitely a goal for our department and has been. We're a very fiscally responsible department, and that's something that we very much want to be able to do, not only for our department, but for the town as well. Working on developing a 10-year strategic plan. So this year is the year that we're working on our open space and recreation plan for 2023. It's due in November. We'll be working on that, as well as a statistically valid needs assessment for the community in the areas specifically of programming and facilities for recreation. So that's something that, we will accomplish that within this next year. Additionally, finding those research opportunities for grants to apply for is a huge importance to us, because that also does limit the amount of financial ask that we need to make from the town. I had already talked about the statistically valid survey, so that is something that we are in the process of doing. Researching land opportunities and looking at different parcels, potentially with help of town council. And we have also looked at a lot of these parcels as a larger group with the assessor's office, conservation, and making plans to be able to clarify what those parcels that are owned by the town are, and what we can be able to combine. So that's been an ongoing project as well. And then just being able to work ongoing with the public schools. We work very closely with them. Light and water, highway as well. They are, definitely absolutely necessary for us to be able to maintain all of the athletic playing fields. So that's something that, we want to be able to keep working well with them. And then the last is an update on the MOU. That's something that, as we are right now, we've had a lot of really good interactions with the school department. So I don't feel at this point in time that's something that we really necessarily need to move forward with. But that's something, we can always revisit in the future. All right, so this year for the capital budget requests, we had asked for a replacement of our 2011 Ford Ranger pickup truck. There's a few different reasons that we wanted to be able to update that, but that is something that it sounds like we have gotten approval to do that, to replace it with an electric vehicle that we will share with the building department. Replacement of the Long Lake sailboats, that's something that we will take out of our revolving account to be able to purchase those so that we can get those ready to go for this upcoming summer. The resurfacing of the basketball courts at 300 King, this is something that we need to look at doing about every 5 years. So at this point in time, we're about 7 years since they've been resurfaced the last time. They are in okay shape. We didn't use them obviously during COVID, so that was able to limit some of the use of that space. So that's something that moving forward, that would be an ask for an upcoming year. And then a Long Lake dock replacement. That is also something that we would need to request in upcoming years. The main reason for that is it allows us to be able to put a path down the middle of the swim box, so we could actually create 2 zones. So one, if we do have a large group for programming, that could be Camp Tehadawon, they can be on one side of the lake while the public can use the other. Additionally, it also creates easier access for the lifeguards to be able to do any rescues that they would need to do. All right, so for projected for 25 to 29, so that's a 5-year capital plan. So we just spoke about those other 2. One that's been a long-standing request has been creation of a new athletic field. We developed a field needs study in 2017, and from that we know that the fields are massively overused. And that's something that we really do need to be able to figure out a way to get out of this cycle, because we end up closing down. For example, we're going to be closing down the high school fields so that we can bring the sewer online, but that's going to close out that area for us to be able to use. Therefore, we're going to have to look at using other spaces. When we start doing that, then we most definitely overuse those areas. So to be able to balance out the use of fields, we really do need to look at that as a potential capital plan moving forward. The community pool, I know this is always like a hot button issue, but this is something that we have seen requests for this facility increasing every single year. Parents really want their children to learn how to swim. We have seen unfortunately, since COVID and moving forward, there's less lifeguards that are out there, and we're seeing a higher level of drownings correlated from that. So, parents are really trying to be proactive to make sure that their kids do learn how to swim. So that is something that's been asked for sure. It would also provide year-round access, and it could definitely relieve some of the crowding that's at Long Lake during the summer times as well. So the next one would be a renovation of Fay Park. Again, this has been like a long-standing request for capital plan. And this the majority of this work would be looking at the ADA or AAB access that needs to be worked on. Updating the playground in collaboration with the Littleton Fire Department, parking needs for the park, and looking at some sort of pavilion that would be able to assist in community events that are held there, as well as be able to increase rentals. And then lastly, I know this has come before the select board, we've talked about this, a creation of a dog park, and this is, again, something that's been requested of of us from the community. So those are things that would be coming up in the future over the next 5 years, potentially. All right. So for the budget, we're just looking at the general fund. So the things that originally were requested were the staff wages, which include the director, myself, the assistant director, and the original request was for the full coverage of the office coordinator. Utilities that we have to cover for the department with facilities and with field usage. And then special events that are at no cost to the public. So in the updated one, you can switch to that next page. In the updated one, the staff wages are now reduced by $29,869 because that will cover half of the office coordinator's yearly wages. In the future, that's definitely something I think, as a department, we could use the coverage of that. That's something very important. I know we've had the conversation of, if it's covered by or assisting any of the recreational programs, then therefore it should be covered by a revolving. But a lot of the office coordinator's position is helping out with payroll, turnovers for cash, check, and credit card, AP warrants, P card statements, things like that. So there's a lot of work that they do that help us within the office do the work that we do for the town. So that is something in the future I definitely would like to consider that. One thing that I am requesting, last night we were supposed to meet and talk about a grade increase for our assistant director. Unfortunately, we couldn't meet last night due to the weather, but part of that would be part of the budgeting. So with that increase, or with that proposed regrade, that would increase the assistant director's position by $1,440. So that would be added into the updated amount to get to the $205,937.14. So if that goes through, that would be a request that I would make for that. Utilities was originally $36,000. So this increase was calculated using the actual costs on the from month to month, from July through December, and the numbers are exceedingly high, mostly because of the water usage, unfortunately, for the fields. So that's something that I know the discussion was, the Department of Public Works was putting in a request for putting a well in. So if that's something that we are able to do, then I would totally be 100% in support of that. If we're not going to do the well, I still have the funds, the bills that I have to pay for that. So that's something that as long as we're able to move forward and we can actually do work with that well to be able to reduce those costs, then I think everything will be absolutely fine with eliminating that $11,000 out of the utilities line. Let's see. Where are we at now? So we talked about the office coordinator position to be funded by the general fund. That's in the future. Again, as I mentioned just minutes ago, coverage of increased costs for the utilities, specifically water. Water has been one of those things. Our town has been in a drought. For us to be able to have playing fields that are usable, we do have to water them. And unfortunately, that costs a lot to be able to do that at this point in time. And then funding maintenance and renovation costs and labor for work in the future. And this is more of, we're really lucky at Parks and Recreation that we have Jacks and Janes of all trade, and that we're able to do a lot of work as far as being able to repair things, paint things, build things. So just as we move forward into the future, a lot of the projects that we've been taking on in-house. So our staff, when it comes to 300 King, we installed a fence out there. That literally was myself and our staff. A lot of the components that we build for our department, creating and updating the third floor and second floor over at the library. That was all, completed by our department, except for the floor. We did have funding to fix some sections of the flooring and some electric work done. But just in the future, that's something that is becoming aware on the staff to be able to do those and have the expectation to complete these other jobs and be able to complete their work at the same time. So just as we move forward into the future, that's something that I know we try to be prudent with our choices with finances, but that's something that, it really would be important to fund those things in the future. So I think that's the last piece that I have for that. Are there any questions that anyone has?
I think, yeah, and a couple
Yeah,
of
Tyler.
on utilities. So you mentioned, so in the current budget, we have an increase in ninth said that was like a reduction from what you thought you needed after water increases, right?
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
So for utilities, it's going from 23,000 to 25, right? But we
Right.
is that
So
assuming the wells going? Is that assuming like the savings from the wells? Okay.
Yeah, so my original ask for going into this year was actually 36,000. So when we had talked about putting in this well, that was something that would drastically reduce the water costs. So with that being implemented, then that's something, the prices are still going up. The cost of electricity, the cost of porta potties, all of those things have increased due to inflation. So yes, it's jumped by 2,000
Okay.
essentially
it
this
makes
year.
sense. I was just like curious on
Yeah.
the timing, right? If the cap article goes in for next fiscal, the well's going to be built in time to save you that money, right?
Fingers crossed.
And then utilities, probably for Alicia, I mean, we talked about utilities are typically in the building, under facilities, but are we able to separate these out just because it's irrigation and supporting the programs? Like why, utilities for Park and Rec is called out versus being rolled?
Most of the utility costs are water costs.
Okay.
So even with the reduction, $11,000, we took into account that there's going to be a period of time before we can really benefit from wells. And there should be enough money to cover that delta.
All right, yeah, no, and then, calling out the utilities in the Park and Rec budget versus rolling them into facilities like we're doing for other departments, is that just?
I don't know what the percentage breakdown is between water and electric, but the majority of that is water, correct?
Correct, but what was happening is since she was an enterprise fund, she used to account for those
Right.
utilities herself, so it's never been within the facilities within the general fund. So since we newly created this division for her, she plugged the utilities in here because she's starting up a new fund. So it's up for discussion on whether it's going to be revolving or it's going to be general fund in the future.
All right, so, makes sense, thanks.
Quick question. Is there a way to get a total picture of the budget, like money coming in and expenses going out? Because you mentioned some of the wages are part of the general fund, but I'm
Right.
guessing there's wages in other places. So
Yeah.
seeing it here is a slice of it, and it would be easier to see the whole budget. Like what's the money coming in, what's all the money going out,
Right.
total budget.
So the revolving fund was voted in at a cap of $1.1 million. That was at the last, that was at June town meeting. So that would be the cap for our revolving fund moving forward. The enterprise, typically, we would have around $1 million come through, but at the end of the year, majority, we would have anywhere between $30,000 and $60,000 left over. So it was a really razor-thin margin for operation.
But that answers, well, I didn't ask the question, but how much money coming in, how
I
much
knew where
going
you were
out? You're
going.
about
Yeah.
break even. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. I absolutely hear you on the overuse of the fields. I'm just wondering if you have any sense of locations, because I am thinking.
Yeah. No, so there's plenty of things that we could do once we start having that discussion. Some of it would be looking at the land that we currently have and reconfiguring what we've got. That actually could get us to a pretty good place to be able to efficiently use the space that we have. Because currently, right now, there's a lot of spots where we're doing anywhere between 2 to 3 sports, and trying to share those locations becomes really difficult. Whereas specifically with baseball, those aren't things that you can really move around. So if you're able to actually reconfigure how the baseball diamonds are actually, pointed and organized, you really could maximize the efficiency of that space. We also have looked at many other locations. So Cooper Farm was one of those that we had talked about in the past. Trying to think of.
Yeah, because there's not too many places.
It's hard, I know.
Where you
Yeah.
can stick in another soccer field, for example.
All right. I mean, and we've even gotten to the point this year where we've looked at, are we going to have the younger, like the kindergartners at a Fay Park to be able to run the programs? So we do. That is something that, in the goals for the year was looking at spaces. Where can we find space to actually put these fields? Yeah.
Glad you're looking at it. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, we're constantly looking and trying to see what the possibilities are. When we came up with the original plan for the Cooper Farm parcel, when we were talking about the tennis courts and things like that, there were about 18 other parcels that we were looking at too. Not that they all have their own issues that come along with it, but there are possibilities out there for what we have in town land already. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A question. I'm assuming that we'll see capital on the DPW side for the wells in
It's in the capital budget.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And just a weird thought popped to my head when the water department puts in a well, they run into bureaucracy that you wouldn't believe with the state. And basically the state controls what municipal wells can be. With this being a municipal well, or a well being put in by a municipality, are we going to run into some crazy?
Yeah, Fred, I think we have different standards, so that's for
And that's
drinking
fine.
water versus irrigation
This
purposes.
is
And
not
that's fine.
potable.
Yeah, these will be
Here
smaller.
we go, we think we have a solution, and then we just
Right.
run into
Steve Young
a wall.
has executed on this in the town of Chelmsford.
Right.
Where he came
Okay.
from, and he's got kind of
Okay.
the boiler
Great.
plant ready to go, yeah.
Yeah.
It's non-potable water, so it's different.
Potable water,
Correct,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
Could be, but
It could be.
So on the wells too, I assume we're putting somewhere on the school properties or things where there would be watering
Where the fields are.
where the fields are. I'm saying we should consider when the sewer goes in and we're paying sewer fees on the water-to-water fields, we might want to consider differently where we're putting wells, right? Right now, we're not treating per unit per sewer because we're the only consumer. When there is a sewer and they're going to charge you based on your water meter, we don't want to be watering the fields with that. So we might want to consider where we put the wells based on the sewer.
It's not going to be drinkable water.
I understand that.
No, but Mark's saying the charge for sewer is based on water usage.
it's different. In a house, you have a water meter. So if they're looking at the water meter, that's for your drinking water, and there's a sewer connection on how much is going out. Our water meters are not, they're just fields. So
For all
a lot of,
All of the fields are that way? Okay.
to my knowledge, yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay.
My other question is on your budget. You actually, in the narrative, you said you have 3 coordinators positions, but there's only
Correct.
2.
Yes.
Are you planning on filling that third, and that's funded out of the enterprise
Yes.
fund?
No, it would be the revolving
The
fund.
revolving fund.
Yes.
But it will affect, back to your point, Fred, of budgets reflecting all of the benefits come out of another budget and aren't in the department budget, so.
So yeah, we're in the process of hiring for that position right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Michelle.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I'm Amy Green. I'm the conservation agent in town. So conservation generally has sort of two different areas of responsibility. The first one is the regulatory side, where we do the permits and the monitoring and all that piece of work. So the major accomplishments under regulatory this year was the assistant conservation agent hire, which has made a big difference. It was a long time coming, so thank you for that. We had over 100 permit hearings and 150 site visits were conducted. And the conservation restriction documents, I was able to push 3 of those through this year. Of course, they're sitting down at the state because they're backlogged now, but they're on the books. That was for Williams, Browns, and the Hager Homestead. And the ones that are still sitting out there right now are Reed Meadow and the Point. And actually, the Point is still at the state. It's just taking a while to get through the state. On the other side of what we do besides regulatory is the open space side of things. The major accomplishments last year were completion of the Browns Woods grant. That was based on the Phragmites, the invasive species control. Going forward, that'll just be a few $100s a year. Provided some invasive species management training that was well attended by some people in this room as well, for the public to help them understand what the invasive species are and how to control them, and hopefully get their help in pulling things out. And the library also bought a weed wrench, which is something you can use to pull the invasive species out with. So if you want to get out there, you can check it out from the library. I guided a couple pollinator garden tours, both for over at Cloverdale and here at the library, so people can start seeing what's going on there. There's sort of a regional pollinator garden tour that we were part of. Oversaw about 1,000 feet of boardwalk construction last year. That's part of a give or take 3-year initiative to improve some of the walkability of some of the trails we have. Littleton has incredibly wet trails. So the boardwalks have been huge and be able to open up those trails on a reliable basis through the year. I was able to apply for a SISMA grant, which is the Cooperative Invasive Species Management Area grant, to try to control some porcelain berry, which is a sort of new invasive species. Try to get control of it. It's behind Bonsai West, if you are familiar with the area. Try to get control of it before it just takes over the town. And for the Tree City USA designation. Worked with the highway volunteers and a vendor and also the water department to keep over 10 of the properties mowed, which is always sort of a patchwork thing about who can do it and who can get out there depending on how wet it's been. And then the last thing was the parcel prioritization review that Alicia mentioned, and working with Maureen and the assessors to try to go through all the properties in town and see how they are coded or attributed. An example is Mary Shepherd, which is just listed as municipal property, not as conservation. So if you want to increase how much conservation land, it's an easy switch in some of these areas to straighten out. For the goals for fiscal year was to increase staff time, if we can figure out a way to do that. The commission's been talking for a while about trying to reactivate the Open Space Committee, not the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee, but strictly an Open Space Committee. It's hard for the Conservation Commission, who is doing, spending most of their meeting time on regulatory issues, to get down into some of the open space issues. And having a committee to help with things like that would make things, I think, a little better, get more of the input specific to that item. The other goal is the open space management, and especially the mowing. I have a chart of all the fields and trails that need mowing, and try to update it year by year. We get new parcels, such as down at K, that suddenly it needs new mowing, and trying to get someone who can get out there. And again, it's a seasonal thing. Has always been a bit tough. The water department, for example, has agreed to mow the trails over at Newtown Hill. A lot of the mowing in the past has been done by the volunteers with their own equipment, and they feel that both themselves and their equipment is aging out of it. And they've been paying for the gas and repairs and everything, so it's getting harder and harder to get this stuff done. Invasive species control is an ongoing struggle under the open space. We're never going to get rid of them, but try to control them so that the habitat that we have out there can be maintained, and also to include that with a public education thing, so people know what they can do on their own properties, when they can just tackle it themselves, when they might need a permit ahead of time, and try to make that as easy as possible for them. We'd like to see some conservation restriction standards, so that when we do get new property that needs a conservation restriction on it, or for open space, that it is laid out initially, because those things always end up costing a little bit of money, of even sort of, not necessarily an endowment, but something to help pay for the initial cost for taking that on, and most particularly getting the bounds surveyed. If it's going to be new open space with a line of houses behind it, that takes a lot of monitoring to make sure those houses aren't dumping everything and encroaching into the open space. The open space acquisition funding is always sort of a struggle. As prices go up, it is harder and harder for towns just in general to buy land. So that takes, in particular, grant chasing, which is a lot of effort, and it's very competitive now. So that's a push. And then just public education in general on all the things that the open space has to offer. No capital requests, how's that?
Is there any more?
And I don't expect any. I will say that in light of having a separate budget, the fees that we get under the State Wetlands Protection Act go into a separate wetlands fund. The fees we get under the bylaw go into the general fund. And that wetlands fund can only be spent on wetland issues. So I use that for travel, mailing, and things like that. It can also be used for salaries, and if need be, within our department, eventually it could probably help out buying a vehicle with that monies as well. So for the budget update, you can see what we had asked for. Excuse me, and the increase was for the increase in the assistant conservation agent hours, which is 19 right now. And the revised budget was to keep the assistant agent where he was, which is a difference of the $4,600. I could certainly cover the $4,600 out of that wetland fund, but that doesn't account for the sort of hidden cost of having someone who's benefited and the rest of it. But that will probably be something we would like to continue to have on the table for discussion purposes. And I think, was that the end of it?
That's it. Okay. Great job.
So looking at the performance, I see that site inspections has almost tripled in the last 2-3 years, from 67 to 149.
It does go up and down,
okay,
depending on what's going on. If there's something, the earlier times, Cooper and Kay and Durkee took a lot of inspections, and then that dropped off. And then it went back up again, and we'll be up there too with things like, Monarch and even Great Road Robinson. So it is a bit, not even cyclical, but it goes up and down.
And then the Oak Hill Conservation Maintenance Cost line item, what is that for?
That is, originally that was the cell tower fund, which had been basically kind of a third account of mine, if you will, but that had to be closed and taken back. So there was something over $300,000 in there, I believe, when we did it, and you probably have
said
the,
we had to close that special revenue fund
Yeah.
because there was no statute, so it's in the general fund, it's tracked in its own revenue line, but so she has funds available to spend right away.
Oh, I see.
We put a
It's
line in there.
essentially a transfer.
Right, and then
Okay.
at fall special town meeting, we do a transfer out of the general fund back to the stabilization fund to
Thank
make it
you.
whole.
Makes sense. Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess I'll steal Alvin's thunder. Just, yeah, it's just, it's the wages, same thing on this one, right? The detail doesn't match the roll-up, and the detail breakout's higher on this one.
Yeah, you're
so-
probably going to see that all across, my apologies, but we were going through updating the salary schedule.
Okay.
So when we were putting in the rates, they were different with the rounding, so we will update that so they don't
Okay.
match.
Yeah, and the other one's like the the budget was bigger. I just want to make sure there's enough. This one's the opposite, so make sure there's enough.
yeah, and part of that was also because when we had budgeted for the hire, we had assumed more hours.
Okay.
Comment, question. Do you know roughly how much your department received in, or you applied for a lot of grants. Do you know about how much money in grants you get and how much time that takes?
Well, the biggest one was the Browns Woods, and that was the $760,000. I think altogether, the 8 years I've been here, it's approaching $1 million in, smaller grants. Something like that big MVP grant, which was Browns Woods, was easily 80 hours. It's a heavy lift.
So what I was trying to throw you a bone and say, if we gave you more hours for your assistant, is that partially payable through, theoretically by, you can apply for more grants and.
Oh, right, exactly, which is part of what I've been able to do. I think around Thanksgiving also, I realized I had a little bit of a lull, so I overcommitted myself to grants. So, we're able to do that. We're talking about going for a grant to see if the town is interested in purchasing the Webster property, which is 30 or so acres out on Bulkley Road. The land grant that will come for is I think in June. So we need to have some discussions with you all to see, moving forward and how to pull together the funding for something like that, because the grant certainly won't pay for all of it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. So, thank you for your time. I was going to mention about filling out the forms. You'll notice I put Planning Division of the Land Use and Building Department, but I think you all know that I'm still the Planning Department and hope to be for quite some time. Major accomplishments, wanted to highlight the grant awards, a significant amount of permitting that we've done, the planning studies that we currently have underway, zoning bylaw amendments that have been taking a lot of time and effort across many departments, staff departments, both the firearms business zoning bylaw and the proposal to expand the King Street Common District. And then one of the successes was to fall town meeting supported funding approval for assistant town planner. So department goals for this year, so fully staff the division, get the assistant town planner in place. This will allow us to appropriately address planning and zoning board permit applications. Last year with some staff turnover, zoning board of appeals was switched to the planning division, and we've been able to keep up with that because they haven't had a lot of applications. So big shout out to Lucia Pacitti, who has taken on that additional work, as well as now supporting the broader land use department. We'd like to continue supporting the ongoing planning studies and initiatives, have a budget capital request for zoning diagnostic and recodification
like to get that started next year, should it be funded. Been able to do some work on grants. I would like to be able to keep that up. And I would like to continue to support the Affordable Housing Trust. Given all the work on the planning side of it, I feel that I haven't been able to dedicate the time that they need, but I certainly appreciate working with them. So I mentioned for the capital, the $32,000 request for a zoning diagnostic. That's the first phase of a diagnostic and then recodification. The diagnostic would tell us what needs to be changed and updated in our zoning bylaw. And then the recodification is actually making those changes and asking town meeting to approve those. So the request was supported by the town administrator's budget, 5-year capital plan, so the FY 25 and 26, 30,000 each year for the follow-up to the zoning diagnostic. And the planning board hasn't yet talked about what to do for the years following that for capital requests. Then we get to the operating budget request. So looking for a full year salary funded both for town planner and assistant town planner. Expenses are just the usual expenses. Some of the professional development and conference was taken out of the planning division budget, and my understanding is that there would be funding available through the town administrators or HR department instead. So that's a difference of about $2,000. Projected operating needs. Would just want to highlight the professional development for the town planner and assistant town planner, and cross-training for the local building inspector in form-based code. So that's my brief presentation.
Thank you.
Certainly open for questions, and I would actually like to thank both Anna Houston and Bartlett Harvey, planning board members, for attending this evening.
Questions?
Yes. Man, are we still trying to fill the assistant town planner like this fiscal year, or are you waiting till?
Well, I believe tomorrow night, the Personnel Advisory Committee will be meeting to grade the position.
Okay.
I think the funding starts April 1st, I believe. Yeah, so.
Thanks.
Guess that's it.
Oh, that was
Thank
easy.
you.
Thank you.
I brought backup. Good evening, thank you for having me tonight. Ed Mullen, Littleton Building Commissioner and Director of Land Use. Normally, I would put a lot more effort into this, but I've been out on the road doing inspections because our local inspector had taken a position elsewhere. The good news is, he's decided to come back. So, he took a 2-week hiatus, and we, with the support of the administrator's office, wrote him another offer letter, and he'll be back next Monday. So, that being said, I will be back in the office and able to pay more attention to these details. Major accomplishments for the calendar year 2022. We implemented the land use department. We got ourselves moved to the lower level of the old library. We renovated the space and then relocated the office. With the help of Light and Water, their donation from old cubicles. It's an impressive space. I hope you guys got a chance to come down and visit. We also expanded the use of our view permit software, OpenGov, for storage and retrieval of permitting information, including special permits and variances. Also, just this past week, our office coordinator has implemented the upload of Title V inspection reports and or approvals. So we now have a Board of Health contingent in the OpenGov, so there's more records available to the public for viewing in our software. Department goals for fiscal '24, cover the ever-increasing workload of a fully staffed department, increase permitting software capacity use, initiate process for tracking complaints of building and zoning violations. I can tell you that this past year, we have issued more permits and done more inspections than the previous year and collected less revenue. I think it speaks to the fiscal situation across the town. People are still looking to do projects, but they're looking to spend less money doing them. So we've gone from full home renovations through the COVID pandemic to now decks and porches and bathrooms. Smaller projects, but still a lot of them. Next slide. So initially, we had no capital requests, but Alicia spoke to it in her presentation that an F-150 Lightning, their electric vehicle, would be sought out to be purchased. Park and Rec is picking up the ball on that, and I met with Anthony to discuss, our needs were going to be out FY '25 or '26, but when we were discussing that, he made the mention that why don't we share a vehicle? And our hours typically are out in the field between 10 and 1, and I spoke to Alicia, and she thought that it was a doable ask. So at Anthony's suggestion, we said, well, we'd be glad to share a vehicle and unload one of our gas guzzlers. So
Both.
in time. So again, with the TAs, there's no change in the capital request, but projecting out for FY '25 and to FY '29, replace the 2015 Ford Explorer with a F-150 electric, and then in 2017, again, do the same thing. It looks like we're a year ahead of schedule on one of those. Building Division, Land Use Department, the operating budget request highlights fund Land Use Department rather than funding multiple separate divisions, keep level staff operations, and continue to discuss local health agent, public health coordinator. So in that, we had a revised TA budget operation adjustment, staff reduction of gas and plumbing inspector hours from benefit eligible to non-benefit eligible, meaning moving from 20 hours plus to a 19 max. Discussed that with our executive, Mr. Ansaldi. Hopefully we can find some wiggle room in there. I think we had a discussion with our plumbing and gas inspectors, full-time employer, about some flexibility on their end to maybe make it more palatable for the town. And again, the extend the contract in the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health. We were not able to fill the public health coordinator position. We received over 150 applications, and none of them had a sanitation background or any idea what a Title V septic system was. So that being said, we'd like to ask to put a pin in that one just for a little bit, because some exciting, which Kevin's here to talk about as well, events have transpired just in the last 48 hours. So want to hold on to that one and revisit it in maybe the next week or so. And the other item was when we proposed the reorganization of the Land Use Department, there was going to be a director, and in the proposal and town meeting vote, there was an assistant director of land use, and that was also taken out of the line item. So if you look at the line item changes, some of the money, a lot of it was moved over to salary for planning division and out of the land use division, and some other incidental savings. We also took on the IT for OpenGov. We're now paying for the software that we use, and I believe it's in the right place. Projected 25-29, hoping to keep and employ and maintain our seasoned local building, electrical, plumbing, gas, and sheet metal inspectors for anticipated multifamily and commercial development in FY24 and moving forward. Upgrade vehicles, to hybrid and electric, and local health agent attention.
Yeah, we got some slides, Kevin.
We got a couple of slides.
It's the first I'm seeing. So.
No.
Can we talk about land use before we talk about Board of Health? Go ahead.
On the plumbing inspector, that we're going from 20 hours to 19 hours?
Correct. That's a proposal in the TA's budget.
Why are we not going to
That was his request. I supported the request.
for 20 hours?
for below, because we did the same thing with the electrical inspector, dropped him from, except Acton picked up some of the costs because now we share that,
Yeah.
so.
So there were pre-existing conditions with the electrical inspector, which is why you worked out with John, right, with Acton. What's the savings of us not gonna?
It was a request by the building commissioner to reduce the hours. I supported the reduce the hours. He, since then, has said a change of heart and would like to consider those to be put back. So that would go on the list.
Correct. We originally, our plumbing inspector was hired at 5 hours a week in April. It'll be 10 years ago. With the budgets and the constraints, I had a conversation with Ed Sullivan, our plumbing inspector, and asked him to go down to 20 hours through the fiscal year just to try to maintain funding. He agreed to it. And then when we were looking at the numbers for our electrical inspector, where he went down to, he's a 40-hour-a-week employee, but we're reimbursed by the town of Acton on our electrical inspector 55%. So he's 18 hours for the town of Littleton and 22 hours for the town of Acton. It fluctuates here and there, but it does even out. In doing those numbers, Anthony and I had a discussion, and I went to Ed Sullivan and asked if he would, consider going down to less than 20 hours benefit eligible. His original response was, "I'll think about it." And then he said, if I could do 4 days instead of 5, it might work. He then, about 30 days later, came back to me with a change of heart and said, "I really want to remain benefit eligible." I then drafted a memo to the executive office and asked if we could maintain his hours. He wasn't comfortable with the move down to the less than benefit eligible hours, so I have since.
So the budget was already submitted when that happened, but it's not like he doesn't have benefits, because full-time employee, 40 hours a week for the town of Billerica. Concern that I have with that is we have a lot of major projects going on. So he's able to satisfy the needs of the town after 2:30 or 3 o'clock, when a lot of contractors that I think that you all hire work 7 to 3, which means they have to stay on. We've heard some complaints over the past that they don't particularly care on wait until 3, 4, 5 o'clock before we can accommodate their plumbing inspection. So it's not like he's not going to get benefits. He's got full benefits with the town of Billerica. So it's something that we certainly can explore and put him back. He is interested in jumping on our benefits, so it's not just a matter of a couple hours. It would be, we'd be adding benefit costs.
He is interested in getting into our benefits. He is interested in
That's
getting on board with our benefits.
Potentially, there's some circumstances that he's expressed to me that he may want to use our benefits. That being said, what he's really concerned about is vacation time, sick time, and contribution to retirement.
Which he gets with the town of Billerica. It's certainly, and Ed and I talked about this, I'd be willing to talk to Billerica, but I'd also be willing to talk in a different schedule where our community can be a little bit more accommodated as far as having inspections done during the course of the day and not all of our inspections be done after hours.
Trade off a couple days.
Right, exactly. We talked about that, so.
Tuesdays, Littleton's early days.
Right, exactly. It's exactly what we said.
Right, and I think it's a fair
Good
ask, and I did,
compromise,
and I did reach out to the commissioner that Ed reports to in Billerica, and they said that, happy to work with us and accommodate us in any way, shape, or form. They went through a really horrible time with a really bad plumbing inspector, and since they've had Ed Sullivan, they reached out to me to advocate for him on his behalf just because they find him so valuable. Ed will answer the phone 24/7. If he's in one town or the other, you can always call him. And
That's kind of my point, is that's the feedback that I think we've gotten. Is that
yeah, he's super helpful.
And I didn't realize there was the potential. I mean, he's not on the benefits. He hasn't taken benefits from the town of Littleton. So his agreement to lower his hours from 25
to
20 or 19, appreciate that, but I think if we can come at the 20, show some loyalty and I mean, I prefer that he not take our benefits if we make him benefits eligible because he's on the Billerica program, but
We can put that on the list.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you guys working that out and trying to talk to Billerica and work out a similar, you and John kind of hammered that out and figured out a way to make it work. So I think that there's probably an opportunity here for us to make it work and I think it'll benefit it as well and keep an employee happy and satisfied. And it's, to your point about Mike coming back, It's not easy to find somebody, especially somebody that gets along with your old department, gets along with everybody in the town hall, and the contractors are okay working with them. So, which is the case for, I think, your whole staff. So, I'd hate to push them away, I guess. So, I trust that you'll work it out.
I mean, so the discussion, he did wait quite a while to give us an answer on all of a sudden it was, so,
Yeah.
but, you know, it was something.
He's complicit here too. Yeah, I
Yeah,
get it.
he had some time until the budget was out and then it came
Okay.
back and then the memos went around.
Okay, appreciate the background.
Thanks. Kevin?
To be fair to Kevin, we put some of these slides together for him. If anything, we really wanted to provide an opportunity for Kevin to talk about some of the things that are going on with Board of Health and the challenges we're having in filling this slot. So, but, you know, Kevin, if you want, you want me to try to do it? Or
Yeah, no, I can just get to the point.
Get to the point. So there you go.
So
There you go.
we were approved the position of, and had the position graded for the Public Health Coordinator by the Personnel Advisory Committee. It was approved by the Select Board. Mr. Mullen and I have had a hard time finding the person that checks all those boxes, but a recent development as of, was it Friday? Some very encouraging and exciting news came across our desks, and we need a little bit more time to fill that position in the correct way. And I'm here tonight to ask that you maintain those funds in the budget for that position as we move forward and try and fill it.
So the current budget that we're looking at has Neshoba Board of Health, or it has the position?
It has, the proposed budget has Neshoba Board of Health going back to them and signing a contract. When we commit to Neshoba, there's a 1 year in and a 1 year out, so it's an automatic 2-year commitment. All through this process, it was the right answer while we were going through this, and then we received an application for local building official that checked all the boxes for a public health coordinator. I had a 2.5-hour meet and greet with the individual yesterday. Kevin, and I reached out to Kevin right after, and we're going to have a follow-up meeting this Thursday evening with the chair and vice chair of the Board of Health and hopefully HR, and see if we can't hammer out something that works for all parties.
While in tandem, having Neshoba Board of Health in the background, kind of,
If we can move forward with this individual, well, I think we
wouldn't need that.
We wouldn't need that.
So you're basically asking us just to chill
Put a
for
pin
few
in it.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to do the right thing, we can chill for a few days.
Thank you.
And we're not contractually obligated to Neshoba Board of Health yet for fiscal '24?
Correct. It's a town meeting vote for the contractual obligation, so we have a little bit of time.
Okay. And we would do that in the May town meeting? Okay.
Great, that's great news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for working on it, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thanks.
Didn't see that coming. Mr. Ansaldi.
All right, so we're going to go through the town administrator's budget, which will be nice and quick. So to correct on the senior center breaking ground, I hate to put a pin in Liz's bubble, but spring of '23 is probably not realistic. We're probably looking at late summer at this point. We're waiting for a number of things too that has to happen, so it's more realistic that it'll be hopefully in August. So one of the things when Alicia came on, before we even brought her on, one of the things I talked to her about was, I really wanted the town to get the Distinguished Budget Award. And, Alicia met that challenge, and for the past 2 fiscal years, we received the GFOA Distinguished Budget Award, which is excellence in budget presentation. So that's a great honor and a great achievement for the town. Great work by Alicia. We also spend a considerable amount of time at the end of the year doing a town report. When they first came in back in '17, our town report was less than desirable to read. I wanted it to be a document that you could put on your coffee table and somebody would look and read, and we've done that. And once again, in '21, we received first place at the MMA's annual town meeting report. We successfully have managed the town meetings. Now will be 2 specials and the annual after this next one. Not to mention on the senior center building, that's been a priority of the select board, I think, since I've been here, back in 17. With that, this past year too, we originally were planning on doing that senior center right to the cliff, right next to the library. And then when the initial cost came in, it was somewhere about $18+ million. So we pivoted and we looked at another site, and that's where the tennis courts was. And by doing that, we made that possible by acquiring 31 Shattuck Street, which the town does owe, which we will sell once we're done with the construction, and we'll hook that up to the sewer. And we were able to project the projected savings of $4 million by doing that. Some of the goals that the select board identified for me in my office was support a work-life balance for staff, which is critical. And today, you heard hiring people is a challenge, so really having that work-life balance, adjusting to making work-from-home opportunities. We're looking at possibly having that consistent hours at town hall where we will, maybe close at 12, 1 o'clock like most town halls do, and have that late night so we can have the citizens have access to our staff, not just 4 o'clock. I know that, I'm pretty sure most of you may work past 4 o'clock and can't get into town hall. So we certainly want to make town hall more accessible. Another one of the goals that the select board pointed out was support an operating capital budget process, which we're in this year. This is a lot of it different for the town administrator office. It's something in the past that we didn't play a role in it. Keith certainly didn't play a role, and we are this year, and we're working with the departments, and I think the process is going well so far. We work in partnership with the various town boards and committees and keeping everybody on, helping them with their larger projects. You heard from staff that I meet bi-weekly with every department head to help them make sure that they achieve their goals that they outlined. It's been very successful, and I think that staff does appreciate that and appreciates the support. Also, continue on with, I supply the select board with a detailed report every Friday, except last Friday, and it keeps them informed of what's going on in the town. We work with, and the last thing that, it's probably the only thing that we haven't done right now is work with town council to create a department organizational chart. You have it in your book, a little snippet, but I think what they're looking for is something much more detailed, which breaks down the FTEs, part-time employees and so forth. So a little better idea of where we are and maybe where we want to head to in the future. No cabinets. Our operating budget, we have 3.5 full-time employees. We have the town administrator, the assistant town administrator, the executive assistant, and we have a special projects coordinator. Happy to report that we just filled a position of executive assistant that we've been trying to fill for quite a while. And happy to report that it's a Littleton resident that's joined our office, Lisa Montgomery. She started this week, and we're pleased to have her aboard. Budget reflects just grade and step changes, and our expenditures remain unchanged. Originally, I had in the budget $20,000 for that tuition reimbursement program. That too fell a victim of my recommended cuts, but what we did is we had that. I think you heard the last session on the 17th where they had that personnel reserve of $100,000, and we just took 20 of that and earmarked that towards that tuition reimbursement project. And that's it. Any questions with the town administrator's lean budget?
The travel line item, I think you're the only department that has a travel budget. What's that?
That's true. So
That's not true.
no, it's actually not true. Right? Police have it. The fire department has it.
Human Services has it. Park and
Most
Rec
have
has it. It's for going to trainings and things.
Exactly.
A number of different reasons for it.
It's trainings. It's to support professional development. We just got off, actually, a really successful weekend in Boston at the Mass Municipal Conference. That's what that's used for. Another conference that hasn't been happening in the past that's very useful that I normally attend is the International City County Managers Association. That location varies within the states, but it varies locations from year to year. This past year, we just weren't able to, I wasn't able to attend. We just had too much going on in town. You know, my priority is always going to be to the town first, and if I can make it, great. This year, we just couldn't do it. It's also there for the assistant town administrator too, to participate in those professional development opportunities.
And the matching grant funds?
Matching grant funds is sometimes a grant will come upon us and we have to contribute 20%. You know, so we use that in my line items to do that. Sometimes a lot of Amy Green's grants, that's in-kind services, but sometimes we need to kick in some money. So that's where that opportunity is, that if there's a grant that we need to kick in a little bit to get a little bit, that's what it comes out of.
So is this for a specific grant, or is it this?
Whatever might come up in the course of the year.
But there wasn't any budget for it last year? At least in the book, it's zeroed in '22.
It might be actual spending.
Yeah, it might be actual spending, but
Okay.
it may have been, during COVID, it may have been cut.
Okay.
Before I got back, everything, a lot of things were cut from the budget.
That's okay.
But Brian will look that up.
Yeah, thank you.
Town council's budget, it is what it is. It covers our legal expenses for general municipal law as well as labor law. The expense was $269,519. We just rounded that to $260,000, and we asked town council to not call me as much.
It's actually great to see that that hasn't gone up, because, I mean, that was the number that it was 10 or 15 years ago.
Around $250,000, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually, that's actually really good.
But their rates
They just went up, yeah, the rates just went up.
They did just go up.
First time in 10 years. But
Yes, that's right. So this might be a little tight this year, but...
Right, but it reflects that perhaps we're suing less or getting sued less, which is a darn good thing on all kinds of things.
I've been behaving, Brian.
I'm not touching it.
That was actually a question I had for Alicia, is what is our run rate on it for this year? We had 269, and are we budgeted, or are we on course to stay under that?
I believe we're on course, but I'm just gonna look it up.
It might not be
After this
posted.
weekend in Boston.
Yeah,
The meter's running.
Yeah, the meter's running. Alicia, it might not be accurate because Tom is not exactly, we have to kind
Timely.
of ask him to please send us bills.
Right.
So I think we just
Why
got
do we
a
ask
number of bills for the past few months, so if she looks up actual year-to-date, it's not going to be reflective of where we really are.
It's in the ballpark. It's not 600,000
Right.
or something.
No, there's nothing really major big litigation that's
complaining. I think
facing
this is
us.
great.
So far, again, let's knock on wood. We've been
That
pretty
does
good.
include labor council, which is KP.
And that does include labor council. Now, this is not a labor year, so next year, or the year after, we may ask for
Sure,
an increase
of
on
course.
that. Or we just leave it alone and then we may have to hit the
So
reserve.
this
fund.
lump sum covers both?
It covers
firms?
both.
Okay.
Municipal law and as well as labor law.
And Matthew, just to answer your question too, so the $5,000 was reintroduced in the FY23 budget, and it was, so when that's been there, and that's the same amount from last year.
But it was removed for COVID?
Yeah, it was restored back in the this current FY23 budget.
Thanks. Great.
All right, facilities budget. So at the November of 22 special town meeting, we got the approved funding for new facilities manager position. We're currently interviewing, or Ryan's actually currently interviewing candidates and the team. And hopefully we find a candidate out of that we can bring on as our facilities manager. Our expenses include townwide, as some of you mentioned, our townwide utilities, maintenance, service, and supplies for all municipal buildings.
184.
Department goals is to work with the new facilities director to establish new goals and objectives for that department moving forward in '24 and beyond. Capital budget requests, none of a capital outlay, but we would expect a new facilities director to be involved with the senior center and throughout the building of the senior Shattuck Center. The facilities director will also help oversee the town and school building capital planning in the future. FY24 operating budget request highlights. Initial request was for 2.5 FTEs. That would be the facility director, the George, and it's
Not you.
and we were looking for a half-time admin support the facilities director. Some notable changes that we had to account for is the increased cost of utilities. You've heard that a number of times throughout the last couple of meetings. $10,000 increase or a 17.3% increase for natural gas, and some building supplies. Is that a decrease?
It actually went down.
That actually went down by $9,000, or a 30.2% decrease based on year-to-date spending trends. And some of that money that we were using for the larger, to keep Shattuck Street running, we have some capital outlay that was done in previous fiscal years that we're tapping into that.
For example, the sewer breach and things like that.
Yeah, we had in 103, we actually had a sewer line. Thank God it was gray water and not the affluent, but that just snapped. You know, the pipes are, and we'll go through it. We have a little presentation also with regarding Indian Hill that will go through some of Shattuck Street. You know, the building started being built in 1922. There's a considerable amount of work that always seems to come up with Shattuck Street. The FY24 department operating request, $20,000 increase, which was just a transfer from the PMBC budget to put it to the facilities department. And water, we increased from just $1,800, a little bit, almost $1,900, or a 6.1% increase. So wages would be $192,080, and then expenses would be $622,728.
Can I just ask a question on
Sure.
the building maintenance service? Just wondering what that is, because that went up, 40%?
Yeah, that's just, it's an old building that we just constantly have.
Okay, so that's the that's.
Yeah.
Oh, fine, gotcha.
All right, so the TA's recommended budget, you know, unfortunately, the part-time assistant fell victim to the cuts, so we did not recommend that. Increase in electricity to reflect the projected price increase, and then the building maintenance services to reflect year-to-date spending trends. That went down.
The older building and
So
what you can buy.
so far for electricity, I mean, I know Ellie and Dean did a wonderful job, but,
You know, Alicia, maybe you want to speak to that, because I think you had some conversations with Ellie will let you about that.
Yeah, I did. So they're saying roughly 10% increase on electricity. Now, you're wanting to know how we're doing on currently on our spending?
yes.
So price has definitely gone up, Fred, but what we do is we also look at prior year spending. So if we don't spend to that level, we don't just increase it by 15% increase. We consider that amount that's not spent. And I would suspect, without even looking.
The Shattuck Street hasn't shut down very much, and this building has come on. And I know that this building has been a bit of an adventure so far. So I would expect that we'd be spending at good pace.
We did jack up that number at special town meeting for utilities, right?
We did.
Okay, so the 218 is a jacked up number from
Special town meeting.
So it's not the budget number, it's the budget plus what we...
Yeah, the adjusted budget.
Yeah, I would expect that.
Okay, I'm okay. All right.
So we're
That's the
at,
answer.
we
Okay.
spent 77.5 so far.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just would,
I know what you mean.
in my world, the budget's the budget, and if you move off it, you say it's a budget plus, and then you can go off that, but okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Remember,
I'm okay.
it's special town meeting, we had, budget process take
Yeah.
two, so that,
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
but
fine.
I guess, Anthony, in the budget book, it's only $195 more from the adjusted special versus the 10 grand you had.
Alicia, what do you have on that?
So, it's only going up 0.09%.
Right, because they accounted for the
Yeah, so
increase
that's what I'm saying.
in the special.
Right, so...
And now they're just run rating that.
So we're not going to get any...
And bringing this building more into control, yeah.
And assuming the senior center's not coming online.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it's not right, it's not coming online.
That's an assumption. That was
Right.
Right.
Do you happen to have a maintenance schedule behind the 282? So like, X number of HVAC, $200.
That's gonna be the
6 months?
first thing the facilities director's gonna do, Alvin, is come up with that information, because right now, we don't have anybody to come up with really a
So the 282
maintenance
is just an
schedule.
estimate.
We're
Okay,
basically
200.
slapping Band-Aids, from our expertise of the trades, which is not very good.
I'll just jump in here. I mean, at this conference that we went to last week, and part of it is a trade show with vendors, and there's law firms, there's CPA firms, and there's a number of different contractors, software companies, and things like that. There was a firm there that has an app which it would be a great tool for us to invest in for a facilities management person or PMDC, whatever it is. But it would have all of the assets, all of the mechanicals, and for each department, and it all gets tracked, and they actually send you updates and alerts, like your annual maintenance on the HVAC number 3 at the new library needs to be maintained, and so that it's pretty. I think it was like $100 per building per year to subscribe per building. So if we had 10 buildings that we subscribed $1,000 a year, I think it would be just a tremendous investment for us to make, because it would kind of track everything for us, and we'd be able to pull reports out of it and whatnot. So it is something, I briefly mentioned it to Ed, and actually the salesman lives in Acton. The guy's name is Matt, but I think it's something that we could take a look at even before the facilities director coming in, that can help us to answer a lot of those questions, because we pretty much ask them every year in some fashion. So, great question.
$1,000 to control a quarter mil, that seems like a good idea.
All right, so some projected operating needs going forward for the next 5 years, as we see it right now. We do believe that there'll be a need for the administrative support for the facilities department. We don't expect the facilities director to be able to really do his or her job effectively without having some support staff.
And an app.
And an app, of course. Yeah, and that too, yeah.
Every afternoon.
And then I do expect, and it's not for this year, but moving down the line with when the Shattuck Center opens up, I think that one person, George, who's handling all of our municipal buildings right now, running around, is probably not going to be enough. And I would think that we probably would need another janitorial staff to handle all our municipal buildings.
Are the schools on board with that? I mean,
I didn't get to that yet, but that's a secondary, but no, so one of the things that I've talked to Kelly about, and are they fully on board? Not yet, but in order for the facilities department, if you look at a number of communities, they all have the complete janitorial and support staff and the energy management under the facilities person, so they can work all of the buildings. So I can understand the school's reservations with that, because right now they have control, and they want to ensure that that person's pulled in the direction that the principal of that school wants. We fully intend for that to still happen. It's just somebody who is skilled that could help them maintain those buildings effectively. So that's more conversations, I think, that we have to have with the school department.
Absolutely, but it seems like a problem that could be solved.
I think so. I think so. I think so. Fuel budget. We're hoping they're going to cut fuel costs when we put on some more hybrids and electric vehicles. But there's an increase of $15,000 or a 9.7% increase, and that's just based on the price increases. No changes on that. Select board budget. We cut 44,000, no, just a joke. So the select board's budget's made out of the 14,000 in stipends as well as expenses of $30,800. Expenses.
Can we go back
Sure.
to the fuel budget for a second?
Yeah.
In the narrative, it says the increase is to cover the additional town vehicles, and we're not actually having any additional vehicles, right? We're just
No, it
having
should say
replacement
additional,
vehicles?
yeah, it should say
Okay.
additional, just the additional increase in prices.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
no. Again, if anything, like, when I was mentioning the 2 vehicles that I said when Ed was talking, because we're actually gonna get rid of the park and rec pickup truck and the one events trucks. And because, each department doesn't necessarily have to have a vehicle if it's not being used in the off hours when another department can support it. So this is gonna be a good test for us this year with seeing how that works. So Park and Rec has it in the morning, or George has it in the morning to do his running around to the various buildings. Ed's got it from 10 to 1. Park and Rec picks up on it, does their afternoon rounds from 1 to 4. So we'll save gas, we'll save maintenance, we'll save insurance costs, and hopefully that's a model that we'll continue to use, and just have a fleet that'll be a town hall fleet that can just sign it out and not everybody have their own vehicles.
So selectmen's vehicles will be used during selectmen's meetings by...
I only ordered
police,
4 Teslas because Mark has his own Tesla, so it's just the 4. And I got charging stations that we got on grant, so we're all set.
I get the red one?
You got the red one, sure. George won, George gets one too, because he follows along with the budget.
That's right.
You get a Tesla, you get a Tesla.
All right, so as I said, the select board's budget, the expenses just include conferences, the Magic, MAP membership, travel dues, and subscriptions. So total budget is $44,800. We actually reduced the select board's budget by $7,000, and that was just based on the spending that we were actually spending with Magic and MAPC to reflect actual spending trends. So we reduced that budget by $7,000. And I'm going to take, my voice box is going to take a break, and I'm going to turn it over to Alicia.
Good evening. Mine's going to be even easier. Finance Committee was level funded, $800 for Fincom clerical wages, overtime for the minutes, and for dues and subscriptions, $500. And there was $295,000, which we deem appropriate moving forward. Any question?
We don't have to increase the budget for minimum wage or anything like that, or stuff for the clerical.
We did that part of the classification and comp.
But the number didn't change between '03 and '24, so.
Yeah, we did it based on how much they're actually using, just looking at the trend, and even I think with the $15, it's not going to be that much.
Okay.
We don't have to spend any of it.
There you go.
Right. Make a lot of people unhappy, but we don't have to spend it.
All right, so just to kind of wrap up a little bit as far as the special town meeting, changes that we've made to the warrant before it was actually posted. I know there was one article that was changed, just the one that I worked on, the capital.
Yes, yeah, that would be 8.
Yeah, so that's 8, town meeting Article 8.
And maybe we just take a step back just to remind
Sure.
everybody. So this is the town meeting report. We have two documents that we have to get out. It's the actual warrant document, which is actually formally posted in churches and what have you, that the town clerk and our constable post. But we also have the town meeting report, which is the document you're more familiar with. This is going to be, this is currently at the printer and should be in residents' mailboxes by
this weekend.
Yeah, by this weekend, by Saturday, no later than that. So the document has also been posted up to the town website. So Select Board had voted in principle for this document as we had presented it at an earlier meeting. And as Anthony pointed out, the only really more material change from that is updating the numbers on Article 8 and pull that up.
Sure. So with Article 8, and I mentioned this previously, but we had a number of, our policy says, if you have a capital project, you have 3 years. If you're not going to spend it, then we're going to take it back and repurpose that for another use. So every year, a part of the budget process, we go through this and we look at what's outstanding, what hasn't departments done, or what have they done and just didn't close it out. So it's kind of a housekeeping article, but sometimes those pennies in the couches add up. And in this case, we ended up looking at this and able to move $356,000 from various capital projects, and we're proposing putting that towards, I can't even read it. So it would be for various capital projects for buildings under the care, custody, and control of the Select Board. The work may include, but is not limited to, feasibility studies, design, and construction. So what I envision this money to be used for is, if town meeting approves Indian Hill, then we would go right into we have to go into a feasibility study. That's just Mass General Law, Chapter 149. So we would have the money to start looking at it and see what renovations that we would need to do. Also, we would use some of this money we still have an orchard, we have demands up there, and we need to have some money to make necessary improvements, so forth. So that would be another use for that money. And then really the third biggest area would be getting those tennis courts finally built. So we would have to go into design services for that. So not built, it's reconfiguring or adding on to the existing high school tennis courts, which would make for a nice recreational campus if Indian Hill is purchased, at town meeting so purchases that. We could also look at maybe some pickleball courts off to the side, but that's all depends on the funds available at that point. So that's the really changes to that article. We were able to nail that down, and a couple of those previous projects were general fund, so I could not use those those projects for general fund purposes, of which $22,600 goes back to the LCTV PEG account, and there was $68,550 going back to the water enterprise funds.
So this one motion lets us take the money and then do one of those several things that you mentioned.
Hopefully all of those things.
Well, without needing another vote.
Correct.
So.
Well, the vote of the select board. The select board obviously would have to approve.
The gatekeeper.
Right, they're the gatekeepers.
Right, but we don't then need to go back to town meeting.
No, we would need to go back to town meeting, Brian, once we determine how much we would need to make some renovations to say Indian Hill. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Makes sense.
That was really the only change. Other than that, like Brian said, it's at the printer and you should have it in your houses by the weekend, if not certainly by the beginning of next week, which is plenty of time in advance. We actually wanted to get it to people earlier, and hopefully they read it and participate, and to put on a special town meeting, it's taken us a lot of time. And doing that with this budget process, we really want our residents to be engaged and come out to town meeting to take interest in some of these important decisions that will be made on December 15th. February 15th.
That's the dates tonight.
Yeah,
it's not
it's not falling off the tongue.
So any other questions?
Well, so, I mean, at the last time we met, we had some, general questions about what the overall plan was, and we understand it's
We're going to hit that right now.
great.
Right,
Hey.
where do you have that? Just so I have that under the CIP, I just want to look at the mic. Right there?
Mr. Sanders?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, are you going to talk about the special town meeting with regards to this Indian head?
Yes.
Okay, I have some comments when you get around.
We're going to do that right now.
Okay.
Okay, so we put a PowerPoint together just to talk about Indian Hill, and really, how did this come about? So, to put this all in context, the space needs has been a goal of the select board back in, when I arrived as the assistant town administrator back in 2017. They've been looking at space needs for that long of a period of time. And they first started by funding, I believe it was back then, it was $40,000 for a report on our space needs, with which the Ellen Lieb Architects conducted on December 8, 2017. We did a complete needs assessment, space needs assessment with LLB Architects on March 5th, 2021. The Lieb report was really commissioned to prepare the analysis, facility analysis for the municipal town offices at Shattuck Street. So back then, I think it was 17, like we talked about, what if we created that camp? And if we added on and just completely renovated, we had three parts of that. And is that later in the slides? Am I kind of jumping ahead?
You keep going.
All right, I'll wait till we get to the slide. But it came up with three assumptions that really led to the next study. So let's go right to the options. So back then, that Lieb report, like I said, identified three options: new library, which you're sitting in right now on the slope site, renovating the existing library space, and town offices. And to put in perspective, each one of these options that I'm going to talk about was about $30 million 6 years ago.
We actually put the numbers in the next.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, great, thank you for doing that. And two was to relocate town offices, existing town offices for remaining departments, and renovate and build an addition onto the existing library. And then option three was to renovate the town offices, renovate and build an addition on the existing library, and build an addition onto town offices. So with that, those three options, option one came in at $30 million, $134. That was this library and renovating the existing library space. Option two was to relocate town offices, and at that point, was there another location for town offices, but renovating these existing town offices for the remaining departments and renovate and build an addition on the existing library. That was about $25 million. And option three was to renovate town offices, renovate and build addition on existing library, and build addition onto town offices. And that came in at $26 million, almost $27 million. Back then, that's 5 years ago. What we since have realized, just from building this building to building a building across the parking lot, that the price of per foot construction has gone up almost $200 a square foot. So just imagine what these prices would be today, come some 6 years later, 5 years later. So the goal was to determine the viability and develop
the other study,
the LLB.
yeah.
Right. So
The other study.
the select board then went further, and we hired LLB Architects back in March of 2021. And the goal there was to determine the viability and develop different structures and sites to meet the needs of municipal departments. So there were sites that were looked at, was right here at Shattuck Street for, like I said, the municipal complex. Indian Hill was looked at, and then 255 Great Road, which was the DCU building. So they came up with recommendations that EHS, or Elder and Human Services, was determined to be the town's greatest need. The second greatest need was Parks, Rec, and Community Education. Construction of the library was already underway. And then the town administration and finance and school department would also benefit from expansions. Renovation of the Shattuck Street complex for any use that will require considerable investment to meet the current regulatory requirements. And EHS should be in a new, it was determined that EHS should be in a new structure on the Shattuck. So one of the things that we looked at Indian Hill, and keep in mind, Indian Hill wasn't for sale at that point in time, but I think everybody knew at one point in time that it would be when they were building the Groton Hill Music School. So, but it said, and I'm going to just read it. You know, at first glance, the space types appear to be a good match for an Elder and Human Services program. However, further investigation reveals the program to be a poor fit with this space. This property is not well suited for use by the Elder and Human Services program due to its size, 3 levels, restricted options for the location of large program spaces, lack of windows at occupant height, and need for upgrades to meet the program needs. The King Street property has other attributes that may recommend it for use by another program. So, you know, one of the things when we have been working on the senior center now, the Shattuck Center now, is you're building a building for that's going to have a good flow and security and having a good visible throughout the entire building. So when we're designing this with our architects, you know, our front desk can actually see the entire first floor. The second floor, you know, we're going to have security cameras that are going to be monitored because, you know, we want to always make sure that our seniors are protected. But the second floor, we have another desk that sees the entire complex with glass. So we always want eyes on people that are going to be using fitness equipment, yoga or some other activity, or dance and crafts. So, you know, time is of the essence in the case of an emergency, and this structure is lending itself very nicely to have that flow that we can make sure that if an emergency occurs, that we can be on it right away. Every minute counts. So it really works perfectly for a senior center. Probably wouldn't be for another good use, but it does work well for that purpose. So looking at the Shattuck Street campus, so renovations would require costly code upgrades, including structural upgrades, seismic and wind, sprinklers, fire suppression, and then the whole building would have to be brought up to ADA, AAB standards. Renovation recommended replacements was windows, doors, PVC roof replacement in certain parts because we did do a piece of the roof, I believe not too long ago, yeah. Flooring and both of the elevators are AAB compliant. You can't fit a stretcher in those right now. So future space needs, let's talk about Shattuck Street. So the original wing, which is where the school and EHS is currently in, was built in 1922. The multi-purpose wing, where LCTV is, and the multi-purpose room was built in 1938. The classroom wing, or the administrative offices, was where the bulk of the town hall administrative staff is, including my office, was built in 1938. And the library wing, where right now Park and Rec and land use are utilizing that space, was built in 1952. The rehabilitation would require a full gut to bring the building up to code and address structural deficiencies. So, going with the plan and the future space needs, number one, we moved the library out of Town Hall. Nice picture of the ribbon cutting, although I was told that I didn't look good, but thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, I was talking with somebody else.
Oh, all right. Step 2 is, as you can see, is move the senior center right across the parking lot, and that's a rendition of what the building would look like. It's a few different pictures. The next one is the back of the building. That's the Shattuck Street side. And then step 3 was to move school administration, Parks and Rec, and community education out of Town Hall, and they would now occupy Indian Hill, which would meet the needs that they have for a space. That would give the school department considerable more space than what they currently have, and it would also meet some of the demands that Park and Rec has with a lot of the programming. And, programming that Park and Rec does that I think people often forget is the after-school program is critical to families in Littleton because they take those kids after school that the school department, I think they run BizDen, is that correct? So really Park and Rec is that supplement, and a lot of our families are really relying upon that because both parents need to work in today, housing, etc. So they really need that space, and if you just look out the window now on Shattuck Street, you can see the cars lined up like they are for school because there's that many people that are picking their kids up after work. So another thing that's really nice about Indian Hill is it's contiguous to the school, to the high school. And when you really have a property like that, a lot of communities will jump on that just to have that land that's contiguous to the school too. Future growth, we have some future growth because there's that parcel that's identified in the bottom section. Is that the bottom section? Right in front there, roughly. That we can do. We could, if the community wanted to put a community pool, there's certainly enough area there. So there's a nice lot of land that we could use for some type of expansion in future. Maybe even a park, maybe even a field, a smaller soccer field, something. There's options. But looking at Indian Hill, one of the things, this is the auditorium for those that haven't been in there, and really what lends itself, this is really nice multi-purpose space that the town currently doesn't have. This could be used for, function hall space. We could rent this out for function hall space. You could have a wedding in there. Currently we don't have any place like that. Anytime we're looking to meet with a large crowd, it's never easy to find space. This would allow us to really do theatrical presentations on the weekend, maybe leasing that out to somebody to put on theatrical presentations. So it's a nice swing space that we currently don't have that the community can really benefit from. Plus what we envision in the off-season, like in the winter, that we could line that and have indoor pickleball courts and use that and use it for gym space. Throw in those portable basketball hoops and have some space where Park and Rec can continuing the great program that they do. Just some other pictures, some nice natural light on the left, and then this is what we envision the school department on the second floor. Let's go to the next slide. So step 4 in the whole future space needs was, all right, what do we do with Shattuck Street? One of the things that the select board's identified and really is trying to try to address for a number of years is senior housing. And a number of boards have tried to address senior housing. The planning board and the town has done a really great job at trying to meet that. You did inclusionary zoning, you did accessory dwelling, you did that senior residential development bylaw. I think all good, but kind of fell short a little bit of really creating deeply discount affordable housing. The select board wanted to create a request for information and send it out. Let's see what companies would come back and what opportunities could be had at Shattuck Street to create housing for seniors that would meet 40 to 60% of the AMI, which we do not have in town, even with our existing additional zoning bylaws that's come up in the past couple of years. With that, when we did submit that RFI, and it was back in October 2022, we actually had 3 responses. And those, the chair has asked that I put those on the select board agenda, and we're hoping to do that in March and get through with town meeting. But that's going to be the first time the select board can talk, maybe have those companies come in and find out how they can achieve the goal of creating the deeply discounted housing.
Excuse me, Anthony,
sure.
Why wouldn't you do that before town meeting? Because somebody on town meeting is going to ask and you're gonna basically say, well, we haven't opened the envelopes yet. I don't know.
You know,
It's just
in a
concern
perfect,
that
yeah,
you're gonna
yeah,
have.
so that's not, the request for interest really isn't envelopes in terms of how much you're bidding on it. Really what it is a general request to say, what are the types of vendors out there that do this type of work?
I
that could be able to
understand what an
transition.
RFI is. What I'm saying is, somebody is gonna ask, what did the RFI say?
Yeah.
And you guys are gonna sit there and say, well, we're gonna talk about it next month.
You know,
It's not gonna go up.
Right,
well,
in a
and
perfect world,
I would
Fred, I
encourage you
think
to-
we'd like to address everything quicker, but, you know, we were throwing some curveball this special town meeting. And I started by saying, putting on a special town meeting and generating the warrants and all the logistics that's involved really consumed a lot of our time, not to mention all the staff that we're trying to continue to fill. So we just don't have enough bodies to do it any quicker. You know, I'm sure the select board would love to have that
I hope
quicker.
I'm wrong.
Right.
But I predict that we put out an RFI and we're gonna review the RFIs in March. And you're asking me for $3-4 million to buy a building. So it's a warning. I can see it coming. That's all.
Right. If I may, Mr. Chair, certainly. If Fred brings up a really good point, I think we need to, I think for the most part, the public is not going to understand what an RFI is. They're not going to understand what we asked for, and they're not going to understand the nature of the responses that we received. I think if we put a little bit more detail into what we asked for and what we got back, I think it will help with that dialogue, because we did look at them, just so that you know, Fred. We just haven't gone back and actually discussed them. So that is something that we need to do, but I think if we just add a little bit more detail
meat and potato on the
about
slides.
that, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that would be helpful
We
to
could
the
do that.
public.
Well,
Good point.
You need to have a story
Yeah,
around
I
that.
agree.
Because that's
It's
sort of
too
the
vague.
linchpin
Yeah.
for the whole program,
Right.
I think.
Right, and I think one of the, I don't want to use the word spin, but bear in mind, this special town meeting was originally the gun bylaw.
Mhm.
And then it's like, oh yeah, Indian Hill, and oh yeah, and oh yeah. I think the majority of people coming to the special town meeting are going to be there for, you know, the gun bylaw thing. And so I think it's credible to say, look, we threw together this special town meeting because we heard you, the town, wanted this gun bylaw. This other thing came up, we're scrambling, we are absolutely trying to, and I think this is true, it's always good to have a story that's true, you know, we are addressing the request that y'all made, but we can only do so much at a time. Would it have been better if Indian Hill and everything had happened in four more months? Sure, but it didn't. Sometimes you have to react. I think people can be receptive to that.
They need to understand why, right?
Yeah, no, well put, Brian. You're right on. So continuing on, and I'm almost done, I promise, another 20 slides. So in step 5, you know, in creating, you know, in transitioning with the new library, moving EHS across the parking lot, possibly acquiring an Indian Hill for the Park and Rec and school. You know, now that's going to require a smaller footprint for an actual town hall. So, you know, if we had to just say build a new town hall and accommodate Park and Rec, you know, we're probably talking double the size of the building. And I think that we know the price of construction just by looking at this and the building across the way that we're going to be building that. Doing this at the price that we're getting Indian Hill, and then we believe that, and we're not experts in construction, but we did commission LLB, and they did go through that building, and they really just identified, you know, in its current use, some cosmetics that we consider. So that would be upgrading the HVACs, you know, some painting, some carpeting, some, you know.
General maintenance.
Yeah, general maintenance that we don't think is really gonna, add up. You know, anything we do adds up, right? You can put a light socket in your house, it's gonna cost you $300. We put that same light socket in, it's costing us $9. That's just prevailing wage laws in Massachusetts that municipalities have to live by, which makes most communities not able to really work on their facilities. And I think after I get done with this slide, you're gonna see that Littleton's gonna be in, if all of this stuff that the select board's been working on for the number of years, this community is gonna be in tremendous shape with its facilities for years and years to come. We all won't be here when they need to address anything going forward. But, so that's really gonna allow us to look at a smaller footprint for a town hall. Oh, I went backwards. Step 6, again, I mentioned the senior affordable housing. We would, if the RFI is satisfactory, the next step would be is to develop a request for proposal and identify a firm to redevelop Shattuck Street into that affordable senior housing that I talked about. And then, you know, with that, I think I mentioned how various boards and committees have identified the need for affordable senior housing in Littleton. Future space needs of...
Before you go on,
Sure.
you want to talk a little bit about why the rehab of the building is more affordable with with someone that we hire to
Yes.
do that. Remember, they're not doing prevailing wage, and it's a little the reasons. Yeah. So one of the reasons as to why, too, because we've already said that the rehab of town hall would be a rather expensive thing for us to do. Anthony talked a little bit about the expenses of doing things via prevailing wage. However, if we were to bring in a company that specializes in affordable senior housing, there are grants available to them and ways that they can make it much more cost affordable to essentially provide an amenity to the community that at the end would be senior affordable housing, new library, new senior center, all on one campus, but do so in a more affordable way if we were to renovate for the purpose of reusing it for town hall.
Right, you got to say that. And the one thing that I was hoping was going to come before this is, I thought step 7 would be, and the town hall goes where?
Well, yeah, that's right.
So, just to play on with Ryan with housing, I think at the MMA we heard Governor Healy talk, and I think her number one priority was housing, that she's actually creating a Secretariat of Housing. So, as Ryan said, we believe that there's going to be grants afforded to anybody that really, to make Shattuck Street exactly what they had a goal of is creating that deeply discounted senior affordable housing. So I want to just talk about just an overview of your facility. So,
my only concern about state grants for this type of project is what the voters in Littleton are looking for is affordable housing for the old folks in Littleton. And once you take on state grants,
it's a statewide law.
You're in a very different arena. Normally, I don't know the...
It depends on the grant. You could be right with that, Fred. Depending on the grant, you're right. Sometimes we have to follow a different set of rules. But there's different grants that cover different parts of housing.
Right. Okay.
So looking at your old facilities, you have a police department that was, and these dates are, I don't know if exactly, but around 2010. Your fire department was, rehabilitated and new addition onto that in 2018. You have a new library that was done in 2021. You have the center on Shattuck Street that's going to be 24, cross your fingers. If town hall...
Okay, move to the next one. We can read this.
All right.
Just keep going.
Too ready?
It is. It really is. It's painful right now.
It
needs to be tweaked.
Yeah, it tells a story that you're going to be in the envy of a lot of communities because you've dealt with all your infrastructure where communities don't. I talked about Indian Hill, so I'll skip this slide. And that's special town meeting 7, that's the article. Here's the floor plans that you can review of Indian Hill, and then we know why Indian Hill's for sale. I'm losing my power on this. So, just like I said, the school department, and just go to the the school department and the Park and Rec has worked out some floor plans on what they would, the vision of the building to be. Go down one. And then I mentioned the tennis court, so.
And this is sort of a general overview of what they'd be looking
Right.
at. You know, one of the things that is really important for us is that, you know, if you're talking about trying to make this sort of a agreement and purchase a building like this, you know, we want to make sure that the departments that we're looking to place there can make this work. So both PRCE and the schools have been meeting and looking at different layouts and how this could work. And they're at a point where they believe that they can make this work.
Right.
So it is important.
And to get to the purchase price, let's just go to that slide. So just the purchase price, the asking price was 4.2. Town, we offered 3.5. They accepted our offer. That's a $700,000 savings, or 16.6%. The funding for the project would have to be a borrowing article. We talked about that.
I have to borrow for the entire amount.
Right, we'd have to borrow for the entire amount, which we wouldn't, we'd ban it for the first year or two, and then we
Pay it down using different vehicles.
Right, and then we would borrow any remaining balance that we had with when we go out to bond. Skip the next slide. Just if Indian Hill is, right now, they're holding it for us, but they do have, right now, 2 backup offers. They have an offer at the 3.5 million in cash, and then another one at full offer at $4.2 million.
But keep in mind that they're all nonprofits.
Right, they're nonprofits. It's not going to be something that's going to hit the tax rolls. It's going to be a tax exempt property for real estate taxes.
Right, but if I'm a town meeting member, I'm still wondering, where's Town Hall going to go? Because Shattuck Street is getting emptied, and the town offices are going someplace.
So what we would envision doing is, if the RFIs look good, we would go out and issue an RFP at some point down the road. And the RFP would have 2 components to it. Component 1 is to make Shattuck Street into senior affordable housing. In return, now there's a value to that building.
Right.
In return, we need a town hall. So we'd be looking at some kind of trade-off where we have something that we'd like developed this way, and we need this. So
that's great. I think you just got to say that.
Right. Well, yeah, that's on a slide.
Can we talk about that?
But seriously, I think you have to say it earlier, because one of a trap, because you said if you looked at these buildings, we're going to be the envy of all our towns, all the towns around us. But you can absolutely imagine someone saying, "But I can't afford to be the envy."
Right.
So I think you have to. We know that's a question coming, so we have to address it earlier.
Right. So we put together this slide.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. So we put together this slide deck because, we heard from a number of members, including yourself early on, this just came out of the blue. And we wanted to show the people, this wasn't just out of the blue. This has been thought about in projects in various different levels since 2017. And there's been a story, and we've been building to a certain point,
Right.
to where we are now.
I know, yeah, so I appreciate what you're saying, Brian. We need to tweak this, I think, a little bit. I understand what we're trying to say here. I think it's too much. And I think the story can be told in a better way, personally.
Yeah, I think it needs to be a succinct story. It needs to be a sexier story. And we can have all this information on the same deck, but hidden. And then if the question comes up, let's present the big rocks, the 8 bullet points that get us to people starting to nod their heads. Now, there's still going to be questions no matter what. And then as those questions come up, we can pull up.
We can do that.
Slide number 7, and we've thought about that.
Right.
Yeah. Chuck, I think we always knew it was going to be refined, but we also knew the thoroughness that the finance committee was looking at.
I think for this audience, I'd rather us be bored to tears, and not town meeting be bored to tears.
Right. This is good for us for town meeting. Make it 4 slides.
Yeah.
And tell the story with your narrative.
Yeah, I think it is, but it's also, for me, kind of coming back to the point that, to sell it on a financial basis, there's still a lot of future state to get there, right? So it really, really do have to sell it on the work and the vision, and then there's going to be a lot of future facing stuff that we're going to figure out.
And it's okay to say that.
And it's okay to say that, yeah, we have to be upfront with the residents about that. We don't have all the answers about where town hall's gonna go. We don't know.
But I do think that
So-
the opportunity cost, and I brought this up last week, great negotiations. They're asking 4.2, we got them down to 3.5. For us not to do this would be a mistake. You know, we really would be irresponsible if we didn't. These slides, the proximity to the school, the fact of the building, and accommodate however many departments, you know, for 20,000 square feet, it's gonna cost us $20,000,
Right.
$20 million, right? And we're getting it for 3.6.
Yeah.
See, George? Yeah.
What do you think, Mr. Sanders?
You might want to take a seat for this one.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got paper too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity here to speak on this particular matter here. First of all, the Finance Committee has been correct about this is a long, drawn out. People have turned you off on the television here with regards to this, okay? Here's what you need to do. You need to get to the meat of this situation. I agree with Selectman the coast here. Don't make the mistake that this town made with digital about 7 years ago with 255 down there. I did a program on LCTV, and I told them about this was coming up. And I said that if the price was right, I said to the people, we need to vote for it. Okay? And I'm saying that here tonight because the price is right. The 3,500 for that building, and I assume it includes the land there too?
All the land, yes.
Yeah. There is nowhere on God's green earth you're gonna find a facility like that and the land that is there. So what I'm saying to the people, here's what the people need to do. This is what you should have done here tonight. You should have told the town people where the debt of this town is. I got it right here.
George is
For
doing the
the
presentation.
for the inside levy, right now, we're at $18,500,000. Outside the levy, we're at $10,790,000. We had a total of $29.3 million. Now, if you buy this now, the debt payoff that we're looking at for that amount of money isn't going to amount to a whole lot. But what we have going for us, for 22, we paid down the debt of almost $3.6 million. And from 22 to 28, I tabulated it out, it's somewhere around 3, 6, 9, 11, 13, 15, around 17. That includes the inside and outside the levy. It's roughly about 7 million that's on the outside the levy, which would be 3 million if we take those figures from that period. You're in good shape when we talk about that money. 29 million, and for what we have for a budget, we're in good shape. There's no reason on God's green earth we shouldn't buy this piece of property. You're not going to get that at a better price. Where's the town hall going to move? I'll tell you where the town hall is going to move. One of the things that you have not put in place, which I have been preaching about, the school department is in their cubby holes up there. They've been in those cubby holes for God knows how long. They built all kind of facilities in this town, but they never thought about getting them out that cubby hole. So to put them over there in Indian Hill that would be ideal getting them out the cover hole, okay? That open up space up there. Park and Rec. Park and Rec is no longer an enterprise. When you talked about the stuff they were talking about in this budget, they were talking about being an enterprise. First of all, I questioned that when I first came to this town. An enterprise has to be 100% self-sustained. The only one you have is light and water. Now, when you take Park and Rec, they are now a department. So you can put them over there. They got to think like a department and utilize what space they have, and with the inter-service agreement with the school and occupying space to put on their programs and so forth. What you need to do is that you leave Town Hall right in the shattered building there until such time things get placed and there's things happening in this town. We got plenty of time to move Town Hall into a smaller facility. But right now, they're gonna have a place where they're at right now. But this building over here, we can take something out of that building of Town Hall and put it over here, which will pacify a situation that's been brewing for a long, long time. So that's what we need to do. The other thing you need to do is tell the people the price of this thing way up here in the front. We went all the way. I almost about to fall asleep like that. When it come out, when is the price going to come up? So it finally came to head. You should have told them about this price. People are concerned about their taxes. The taxes in Lunenburg went up 138%. 138%. They had the entire high school, the town was in the entire high school trying to find out why the taxes went up 138%. Thank God Littleton don't have that problem. But you need to come to the forefront and tell people this costs this. This is the opportunity. Sell me the opportunity to why this is a good price to take this and how we can pay for it, and it's not going to go outside the levy. That's the only thing people are concerned about, outside the levy. When you go outside the levy, that's when people become concerned. Long as you can stay within the levy, I tell anybody, if they can put it in the levy, get it, buy it. But when you go outside the levy, you ask me to kick in more money, which is a debt exclusion, which is outside the levy. So when you do that, you're asking people to pay more until we pay it down, then we'll take it off your taxes. But this, we can definitely take care of it. 3.5 million is not a whole lot of money for what you're going to get. You'll never go wrong. Land never loses its value. That facility will do something for this town that has been needed for years since I've been here. And I'm telling you, I know finance, and you can't tell me that ain't a good deal. So I'm telling the people here in Littleton, that is a good deal. You can get that for $3.5 million. Buy it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
I feel like
Sanders.
applauding.
If you need a ride to town meeting, we can arrange that.
I think we know who should present the article.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just one comment, just, because we talk about it a lot in Fincom is, well, it's great to fit everything in the levy, and we're always shooting to do that. It's always give and take, right? And it puts pressure on the cap plan and other things like that, right? So, it's the perception that free is free. It's everything's a decision and everything's a trade-off. So, it's something we want to make sure the town understands that it's great all the progress you're making and the priorities you're setting, but there's always the yin and yang if we're going to stand to that 2.5% per year raise.
And I think we all understand that presentation is great for us and not what you're going to show to the town.
No,
That's completely fine.
Yeah, we wanted to
Different
go through
audience.
the whole details that, made sure the FinCom knew what you know, have known for a number of years. They just weren't privy to all of our background, so I wanted to make sure that they knew that.
We look forward to the 4-slide version of that.
The abridged version.
Right. No, seriously, because you're going to have at least 50 people in the audience saying, when are we getting to the gun thing?
Yeah.
And they'll just, you know, they're ready to vote now. So just...
Maybe we'll get on the call of the articles and we'll just...
We gotta do a really good sell job now, between now and
I'm sure the
town
moderator
meeting.
would let that happen.
So is there anything else besides talking about another date for, instead of February 4th?
No, why don't I talk to Justin yet?
Okay.
Because he had the conflict. So once I get a date, I'll circulate a date around to everybody and, you know, maybe we'll, if it's a Tuesday.
Did we not give the schools enough notice about Super Saturday? I feel like we knew that months and months and months ago.
They just said something came up that I don't know if it's what the reasoning was.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think it was more the school committee, I think,
Right.
that had the conflict than the superintendent. I think the superintendent and Steve Mark would have been available.
I mean, I think ideally, you know, we probably want to avoid the 7th only because we still need to vote our recommendations for town meeting as a board, so probably.
We can work on, you know, we'll start with the schools and what their availability is, and we'll go there from there and reach out to you.
Yeah.
So, that's fine.
We're going to create a nice little doodle.
Tyler, do we have a meeting
Doodle
just
cola.
us to vote?
On the
I'm gonna
7th.
make one suggestion.
But just
Yes.
Yes, just
Is,
Speak
I
your.
mean, one of the good things about Super Saturday is you meet the departments in the morning. In the afternoon, we're off camera in a working session and we finalize the budget. If we
And
try
we get Panera.
Exactly. And if we try and do this at night, we're not going to have a good discussion. So whether it's one night, hear the budgets, a second night, just working session, right from the start, to get that conversation going?
Well, or could we do an evening with the school before the 4th and then do the 4th and then you can have your working session on the afternoon?
that makes more sense.
I mean, we have a couple weeks, so maybe there's a night before the 4th when we can meet with the school.
Do we still get Panera?
We could
No,
shoot
on
for,
Saturday, yeah.
we could shoot for the 31st and sticking with our Tuesdays.
We could,
And then if you want,
yeah, we could do that,
you want to
actually.
go to the 2nd of February and have the working session?
Why don't you ask them what works for them that
Why
week?
don't we lead with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't make it on the 31st, but if we have a quorum, I can.
I'll just say the 31st is high school college planning. I would catch some heat for not making that, but I could do it.
What time is that, Brian? Like 6 to 8?
6:30 to 7:30. That might be tough for a bunch of people.
Or we could reverse and do the select board meeting the 31st and then the third session on the Monday.
Yeah, we could do that.
Just push our meeting to Tuesday.
I can't make I wouldn't make the select board meeting on the 31st. I already moved all my Monday night meetings to
Okay.
Tuesday, so. If we met earlier with the school committee on the Tuesday, like 5 o'clock or 5:30, I could do that.
That might be a possibility too.
Does something have a Monday meeting
We do.
coming up? We could do it 5 o'clock on that Monday, so you guys aren't out an extra night.
The 30th.
On the 30th, we could try that. Again, why don't you, present this to the school committee and see what they can do.
Okay.
Because they may or may not be available for some of those dates.
It's February 1st, not a good day.
We'll reach out and get back to everybody.
That may be good. I mean, there's a housing authority meeting that we can move that. We've moved it before.
Okay. All right, we'll nail down a date and
Thanks.
pass it around.
Any other business? If not, motion to adjourn the select board.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
Motion to adjourn the finance committee.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Brian,
You're great.
Aye.
Brian,
Switch.
hit the button.
Hit the button.